Sorry about that. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the time and place for the Grand Forks Growth Fund Committee for June 23rd, 2025. We'll begin with roll call.
Berg. Here. Crary.
Here.
Friedos.
Here.
Holth.
Here.
Ozowski. Here. Whitney. Here. Wolf. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll begin with number 2, approval for minutes and meetings for May 20th, 2025.
Move approval.
I'll second.
We have a first from Rebecca, second from Berg. Any comments? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Approved. All right. Second, EDA RLF and FlexPace loan request for vertical malt.
Thank you, Chairman Friedos, members of the committee. Here with you today, a combined EDA RLF and FlexPace loan request for you. I'll have Kevin Hatcher from the EDC come up here in a sec and give you some detail on the company, and then I'll come back up to close with some of the financials.
Thank you, Andy. Chairman Friedos, members of the Growth Fund Committee, Kevin Hatcher, Business Development Manager of the Grand Forks Region EDC. It's my pleasure to also introduce you to Adam Wagner, owner of Vertical Malt. And then also we have Matt Jacobson here from Alaris Financial, both representation here that's readily available if you have any company-related questions or more detail on the financials as well. So a little background with Vertical Malt. They're a value-added agriculture company, primary sector certified back in 2023, originally a family farm operation in Fisher, Minnesota. As they continue to grow, they started a pilot facility for their malting operation in Crookston, Minnesota, mainly focused on that malting portion of their of the processing of their business. Actually, if you go to Half Brothers Brewery just down the street here, you can see the brand Vertical Malt there because they have the malt supply there from Adam here. So the company utilizes regionally farmed cereal grains to malt, and then also recently diversifying into the milling operation and then selling to craft brewers, millers, and distillers. With that increased demand, with that pilot facility in Crookston, an ongoing partnership with the North Dakota Mill, the company is expanding their services into the malted flour barley with the mill, resulting in growing operations in the Grand Forks here. So for this project in particular, the company plans to lease a 20,000 square foot space at the south end of Grand Forks, the Enclave Exchange Warehouse that was recently developed. I think it finished just at the end of last year here. And particularly the details that Andy's going to cover here is related to the equipment purchases for the milling operation, and then also the storage of the malted barley and the flour related to it. So, and with that being said, I'll turn it over to Andy to get over the financial details here.
Thanks, Kevin. Just real quickly, so the request from the Growth Fund is a $325,000 EDA RLF loan. It's part of a just over $2.9 million total project cost. The Growth Fund portion, it's largely all going to working capital and equipment with some contingency in there, as you can see in the staff report. The FlexPace request is just under $75,000 from the JDA, 74,892 and some change. That would be deferred for for 66 months, and then thereafter repaid in 12 equal monthly installments, then at the 3.75%. The EDA RLF loan would have a brief 6-month deferral with 120 equal monthly installments, then at 4%. Those would begin immediately after that deferral. The security component, we're secured quite well on this with a subordinate mortgage, as well as blanket UCC on existing and then to be purchased equipment, as well as personal guarantees from the principals. And loan to value, I guess, total on the project. We are behind the Alaris loan, but total loan to value is at 72%, so fairly comfortable with that. So happy to stand for any questions, as I know is Kevin and then the project folks as well.
Yes, Rebecca.
So they want 2 loans for $400,000 and just they're different. I noticed in there that they are going to go from, 2 employees to 5 employees, and also their hourly rate is going to go up from $20 to $33. I guess I'm wondering kind of like how that's possible, to increase the employees and increase the wages like that while they're still coming to us and asking for loans. Can they use this money to help fund those employees?
Chairman Friedhoff's, council member Zalski, what I'll do is I'll invite Adam Wagner up here to give a little detail on what he's planning on his business model related to the working capital and what that looks like from an employee standpoint.
Appreciate the question. Thank you very much. Adam Wagner with Vertical Malt. So cost of goods includes the wages in there. So the loans don't need to go to the cost of goods at all. It's all coming out of the cost of the actual materials that are being sent and all that kind of stuff. So as we're ramping this thing up, there's going to be a reduced amount of hours. So, we can scale the thing. The equipment is there. It's very capable of producing a lot more than we need to, at least initially. And then that's how that's going to end up getting paid out of there. We also have a lot of our own money wrapped up in this thing. So any of those wages that we need to cover during those initial periods of, startup, we'll be paying it out of that section of our own capital. So
I'll just add to that. So the $75,000 FlexPay piece will buy down the interest on the Alerus loan for the project. The $325,000 that we're providing in EDA RLF, I believe is, that's all going to go towards equipment costs. So our loan money won't go towards paying people's salary directly. It'll all go towards purchasing equipment.
Okay. And then when it says current number of employees too, these are the number of employees in Grand Forks, correct? Or are you talking about?
our current operation in Crookston. So
Okay,
myself
so-
and one more. So
Okay, so right now you have no employees.
correct. This is a new venture for Grand Forks. Yes.
And when do you plan on hiring those employees?
As soon as we have all of our approvals, we're going to start looking for people. So just
okay.
as absolutely quickly as possible.
Do you plan on pulling these additional people out of the Grand Forks community, or do you plan on moving your people from Crookston to
These will
here?
be, well, hopefully they'll be Grand Forks residents, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Tricia.
This is really exciting. I'm glad that your business is looking to come to this side of the river and invest in our community. I'm really looking forward to see what you guys have to bring to our community.
Any comments, questions? Well, congratulations. We look forward to having you here. So,
Thank you so much.
So with that, I motion to approve.
motion to get a first?
Second.
I think Jonathan may beat you, so. Oh, yeah.
I have one more question before
I
we
have a
vote.
first and a second.
Yep, before
Okay,
we vote.
Rebecca.
Now, all of this money, like the $325,000 and the $75,000, does it all come out of sales tax?
This would all come out of the FlexPay component will come out of JDA cash. That's where all of our FlexPay ones come out of. The EDA RLF component is, so those funds are federally restricted for only this loan program for projects like this. Those are I guess, legacy sort of from the CREM program or COVID response program from back in 2021. But the 325 portion will come from that restricted pot of money.
Okay, but the JDA cash comes from our sales tax? Is that correct, a portion of it?
I think there's some nuance, but yeah, largely I think that's the case.
I guess, where do we stand with our cash balance? Because I remember that one year we kind of ran out of money to give out loans, didn't we? And I'm
don't-
just like,
No, we we've never run out of cash for giving out loans, and certainly our JDA is certainly in a more than enough money to continue giving loans like this. We did provide later in the agenda sort of our loan portfolio summary. I wanted to give some, I guess skipping ahead, but asking for some some feedback on that, if there's any additional feedback you'd like, and if JDA cash balance is part of that, we can certainly provide that at the next meeting too, just so you have a better idea as to what's available in there.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Kirk.
Mrs. Zalski, I think what you could be referring to is the C-Run, the EDA RLF funds. So those are after COVID, the Fed said, hey, okay, any economic development stuff, we'll essentially give you money. If you deploy that capital, when it gets repaid, you can keep that capital in your community to deploy again. So we did have a point in time where we were like, more or less, it's federal dollars. Let's try to get as much out the door as we can to help support these businesses. And then the money that comes back in now becomes part of this EDA RLF, where now it's restricted for a specific use, but it's back in the pot for us to be able to deploy now. So I think that could be where it was, where we were a little more on a yeah.
And we were running close to the.
And we were, yeah, we
At
did a
one
good job
point, we
deploying
were-
that capital.
Yeah, I knew we never ran out, but there was it was a couple years ago.
Yep.
When we got real close and we didn't really,
Yeah,
That was for the
my
C-Run
apologies,
program.
I misunderstood it. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
okay, but
That was the C-Run program.
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have a first from Ms. Berg and a second from Mr. Holth. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes, or action passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. All right, number 4, the Hive Management RFQ.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask that I be recused from conversation and voting on this particular item to avoid any perceived conflicts of interest due to my job at the Center for Innovation and us being listed for one of the applicants, even though they're not one of the ones being approved tonight or potentially approved tonight. I just think it'd be good to, with that perceived conflict of interest.
I motion that Ms. Whitney can vote.
Second?
All right, I have a first and a second. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. All right, Ms. Whitney is not able to vote. I'll get this right eventually, so. Thank you. All right, hello.
Hello. Good evening, Chair Friedhoff and members of the Growth Fund Committee. My name is Haley Rosasson, and I'm here tonight to discuss the results of our interview process for the request for qualifications of management services for the Hive. We convened a 5-member panel on June 12th that consisted of Mayor Bochensky, Vice President Danny Weigel, Growth Fund Committee member Russell Crary, City Administrator Todd Phelan, and Finance Director Maureen Storstead. We did conduct those interviews, like I had talked about, on the June 12th with Catalyst Campus, Grand Sky, and UND Aerospace Foundation. Each firm was evaluated based on the criteria that was set in the RFQ. Just as a reminder, this included industry expertise, partnership with relevant sectors, experience in developing and reporting performance metrics, mentorship in a startup or scale-up environment, and facilities management and budgeting. This interview process included a presentation by each firm on their submittal, along with a question and answer by the selection committee. Based on the evaluations and scoring, the selection committee is recommending Grand Sky as the most qualified firm to manage the Hive. This evening, we are requesting your concurrence with this recommendation, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Rebecca, yes.
I guess I don't have too many questions, but I'm kind of wondering what we, as the Growth Fund, kind of plan on doing with the Hive moving forward. I guess I would prefer, if we're going to have a different management company, I would prefer at one point just kind of selling it and washing our hands of it, to be honest with you. And so, I mean, I'm not in disagreement of the management company, but I'm just kind of wondering what your guys' opinions are on that going forward.
And so Haley, don't get me wrong. So this is kind of the first, like, I'll use Danny Weigel's, this is like the first corner puzzle
Right.
piece of a 1,000-piece puzzle. I think there's a lot of negotiations and a lot of things that are going to have to go on with that. And over time, we'll see, where this goes and what's effective for the city versus, what's effective for Grand Sky.
Okay, so how much are we paying them?
We have not opened any cost proposals yet, and so what we're looking for is to start the negotiation process after the Jobs Development Authority would approve. So that's when the cost proposal would be open, and then we would begin negotiations with Grand Sky.
And then would the final outcome come back to
Correct,
the
yep.
growth fund and the JDA then?
Correct, yep.
Again? Okay, I move approval.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have first from Zowski and a second, and comments from Mr. Holt.
Yeah, just a couple quick comments. So, I mean, Mrs. Sowski, I would agree with you on, I think, we've had this discussion at this body, and I know at the city council level too, just about divesting in our property portfolio at the city. I know it's been a priority of Mayor Bochansky, and I think, I would agree. I don't know what the process is for starting that conversation. Maybe you just did. But
I tried to.
But I mean, just a note from me that, I mean, I would tend to agree with that as well. So we can keep bringing it up, I guess, until we get there. And then my second question was going to be on the cost proposal. So you have those have already been submitted as a part of the RFQ, right? So we just haven't opened them yet. So all this motion does tonight is just says, yes, we approve of you beginning negotiations.
Correct.
Okay. That's all my comments. Thank you.
All right, first from Mrs. Zowski and second from Tricia Berg. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, number 5, expansion project at 1550 South 48th Street.
Thank you, Chair Friedals. So I'm going to try to continue to go through this and not say the name of the previous owner of this, but so far when I've been practicing, it has not gone well. So just so you know, I can already feel Andy's eyes looking at me. G. Vernova has made a request for us to allow them an expansion project, and this is similar to what we've been doing with them through the years. So they've been long-term renters. It's gone very well for us. But what happens is, as they go through and as the years have gone on, they keep making longer and longer blades. And as part of that process, they need to do these interesting, very specific to their process, these what we call bump outs onto the building. And they're very specific. It allows them to move a blade and then go on to another section. So they've requested to do this, and I think what they were hoping was that they could just pay for the expansion themselves and just leave everything else the same. And speaking with the city attorney, since it is a public building, we can't do that. And so we have to go through this process, and we have a very specific motion to allow us the easiest way to do that, which is to authorize contracting with the APC to develop plan specs and bid documents for the expansion of that proposal. And then secondly, authorize issuing the construction bids, because that's the public process. And then third, we want to authorize review and potential lease modification and or an agreement. So we're kind of leaving this option open for negotiations with their legal teams. Once that gets into the legal teams, I wanted to leave it open to, is there a lease modification, or can we just do this through a separate agreement that our city attorney could work with their legal team to do. I'll tell you, our legal team is a little bit more nimble than when you start going into some of these corporate legal teams. It gets to be a bit more of a process, or at least through past practice, although we haven't done this a lot with GE Vernova, which is kind of a new folks that we're working with. So, and then lastly, authorize any necessary budget amendments and transfers. So we think it's a good thing. We want to continue to work with them. And so overall, we're excited about the project. I think it's good long-term, continue to work with them, but this is kind of the process as we own the property. So with that, I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
I'd like to say something first. I do not feel that I have a conflict of interest, although I do work for GE Vernova, but LM formerly LM Wind Power works for GE Vernova Renewables, and I do work for Grid Automation, and so just thought I'd make that. I have no financial interest in GE Renewables.
So you're saying you're comfortable voting?
I am very comfortable
Okay.
voting.
I'll make a motion to allow Ms. Osowski to vote on this issue.
Second.
I have first from Mr. Holt and a second from Mr. Curry. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? You get to vote.
Thank you. I have comments then. I mean, because I was an employee at LM Wind Power, they do really struggle to move those blades around. They have really made do with the property that they have, and, they take on the extra task of trying to locate those blades into different buildings, which is not easy. And they're willing to pay for the bump outs, correct?
Correct.
Okay, this has been kind of a long time coming. I remember them talking about this when I started with them years ago. And so I guess as long as they're willing to pay for it. And do you know which building they plan on doing the bump out? Is it like the old Herald building? Is that the one that the city owns, correct? Their main
No, this
manu-
is the 1550, which would be just north of their main complex.
Okay, so it is
The old Noah's Ark.
Okay, so it is their main complex then that they're going to do bump outs in?
Well, their main complex, well, like where the office buildings are, they own that parcel. But
Okay.
to the north of that, which used to have the Amazon.
Oh, yeah, the
attached to it.
Amazon, not the Herald. Okay.
Correct, yeah.
So it's that building that
It's that
they're
building.
going to do at their own cost?
Yes, that's what will be negotiated, is that all the costs will be passed along to them in some form or fashion, dependent on the agreement that's come up.
So
with
do we
Hubbard.
have to pay for it up front and then they have to reimburse us? Is that?
That's very possible. The way that's the likely scenario is that it would be through an agreement that there'd be a pass-through, whether we have to front that and then turn around and just bill them, which is very possible.
I remember, I want to say it was like a year or two ago, didn't we put some money down to redo that canteen?
Yes.
In that building?
Correct.
And did they borrow money from us at that point?
That was done differently. So then they paid us back through an expansion of that lease process, and then we billed them back over the years to do that. This is going to be separate. So what we're intending to do with that agreement and through the conversations with them is that they want to pay for that. I think, going to have to be a pass-through right now.
Okay, are they paid up on the cantina?
Yeah, I think that's all paid up. And right now, the lease goes through 27. And then they have a 3-year option as well after that.
Okay, and so up in, do you know if they build a bump out and it takes a solid year to build it, you'd hope that they'd re-sign a lease then with us,
That's exactly
right?
the conversation we had right before this as well, but we haven't entered those negotiations. We assume, especially since they're going to pay for those upfront, they'll want to extend it to a certain period to account for those dollars that they're putting in.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Whitney?
Yeah, first I just want to say that I'm excited that GE Vernova is doing well and they want to continue to expand. I think that's exciting. They're a really excellent employer in the region. Is this process something that we can future-proof in the future for additional, bump outs and stuff so we don't always have to come back here as a model? Or is this still expected that even though we're doing this process this time, we would have to come back the next time too, just because we have to, because it's a public building that we oversee?
Yeah, I think we have to come back each time, but this one's going very fast, I'll say that. And so they literally kind of had that conversation. They've been working with the APC on the side, kind of having a discussion, how can we do this? And then it kind of got dropped to us. I think they were hoping to do that on their own, but we kind of said, no, we need to come through. But I think the approvals, since it is a public building, we have to go through this public process. So no matter what we're at, those bid documents have to be done a certain way.
All right, Mr. Holt?
I was just going to say, maybe if somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but if there was ever an example about the last conversation that we had about the city sort of being in the way, not in the way, but like making it more challenging to get something done, this might be it, right? I mean, because there's just a bunch of extra steps that we have to go through in order to allow them to do the thing that they want to do and pay for the thing that they want. So, I mean, I guess my only question would be, have we had any discussions? Are they interested in maybe buying the building at some point? Or is there someone else that could maybe buy the building?
We'd love to sell them the building or like you were, I think, alluding to is finding somebody else to perhaps own.
Sure.
So we have had those discussions and we're looking into those options because we aren't saying that we want to forever hold on to this building.
Yeah.
Right now, it's been mutually beneficial for both parties, but when it's not, it's not. And this is one of the ways it's not, is that public process slows things down.
It seems to me that, you know, and I'm not a commercial landlord, but I know that commercial landlords typically like to have a really solid tenant as a first sort of, and this seems like it would be a prime candidate for having something like that. So if that could happen, and then we could have 10 minutes less on our growth fund agenda, great.
Sure, absolutely.
Yes.
I guess I don't agree with you about changing the process because it is our building that we own, and I think that, you know, things should be discussed with us before building bump outs. And so, I mean, if it wasn't us owning it, I don't really have an issue with it, but like, as a landlord, you don't want people making major renovations to your property without us being well aware and approving those reservations. So I disagree with that part because I think that's there to protect us. These rules are here to protect us as landowners.
Yeah.
I'm all for selling it, though, if...
That's, just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting we should change anything we're doing now.
Okay,
I'm saying we
okay.
should sell it so we don't have to have this
Yeah, I
conversation in the
love
future.
selling. I want to
That's-
sell
I
it.
understood that.
Yeah.
I do agree with that, but then also, once you guys come up with the agreement on how we're going to be paid, you know, if we have to front the money, you're going to come back to us with the actual agreement, correct?
We may just float in terms of a month time. I think right now that could be an agreement piece that comes in. I wouldn't necessarily have thought that we would have brought that forward because they were going to, by the time the check goes through, we'd probably be paid by them. I think we anticipated going that quick.
You hope so.
Yeah,
But-
right. That would be the agreement that we're proposing, that it is a short time frame that they turn around and bill. So we're hoping for it to be a seamless process. If it does go something different, then we'll certainly be back before you.
Okay, thank you.
Any more comments, questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
I motion approval.
First, Ms. Whitney, second from Mr. Curry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. All right, number 6, loan portfolio update.
Just to give you guys an update, we did attach the loan portfolio that was asked for at our last meeting. So it does include our different types of loans and the outstanding principal balance, as well as there's active and then the ones that are released and paid in full. So if you guys are wanting more information, just let us know. We will bring the annual report forward in August, so we can make sure to add the cash balance for JDA. But if there's something else, just let us know so we can have that for you next time.
Any comments? Yes.
I think it would be helpful for us to know if there were any past due also noted on the form.
Because we know there are some, like the
Yeah,
Chino
but we
Latino or
normally
something.
discuss those, you know, I mean, I feel we do a good job discussing our past due loans in our committee.
We will continue to bring past due loans forward as well as a separate information item.
Yeah, you guys have
Thank
been
you.
doing a great job on
Yeah,
that, so.
yeah, it keeps us very informed, so thank you very much.
All right. Number 7, adjournment.
I move adjournment.
Second.
First and a second. We are adjourned.
Welcome everyone to beautiful downtown Grand Forks. This is the Grand Forks City Council's meeting for Monday, June 23rd, under item 1, call to order. 1.1, welcome and roll call. Okay, Weigel.
Here.
Osowski.
Here.
Berg.
Here.
Lunsky's stuck at a train, so she'll be here any second. Friedolf's.
Here.
Sandy here. Veen.
Here.
Great, we have a quorum. Under item 2, informational items, 2.1, presentation legislative summary. Mr. Bernstrom, good evening.
Thank you, Council President Sandy, members of the committee. As we do every legislative session, we're providing a end of session report. We'll have that attached to the agenda, but I have a copy of it for you in front of you. So just some stats. The 2025 legislative session, they introduced just short of 1,100 bills and resolutions. As the Grand Forks Legislative Committee, we were following 124 of those bills. In this report, I'm not going to go through all 124 of those bills, but what you'll see is based on the legislative priorities that this body approved last December, you'll see some bills that are pertinent to the priorities we have. Getting into, if you take a look at your screen here on page 3, our number 1 priority was infrastructure and transportation funding. The two main aspects on 2 main bills I want to touch base with on here is Senate Bill 2012, that is the Department of Transportation budget. In this bill, that is where they moved the Prairie Dog funding plan. So the Prairie Dog funding plan, oil revenue as that trickles in, it fills buckets, and once a bucket is filled, then it gets distributed. One of those buckets is counties and cities. There's actually a couple of those. Throughout the years, the city bucket had been moving towards the end of the line. So we asked, hey, can we get this more up to the front, or how are we going to do this? They did move the bucket up. They dropped the amount of money that's in the bucket. $80 million will be made available to cities in the state of North Dakota. So that will impact budgeting a little bit. This bill also talks about transportation, the flexible transportation fund, that they launched in 2023. This bill, that fund was continued and expanded. That has $230 million allocated to it in the bill. I'll talk more about Prairie Dog later when we talk about Children's Museum. Also want to touch base, nice work by our Transportation Supervisor Dale Bergman on Senate Bill 2254, funding for fixed route public transportation, but most importantly in this one is the study to determine the long-term funding plan of the state portion of that public transportation fund. Looking ahead under water projects, actually, I should touch base. Public safety is our next bullet as far as priorities. House Bill 1102 is going to provide 2 BCI agents to the Grand Forks Police Department for cybercrime. That bill was defeated, but then those 2 BCI agents were added to the Attorney General's budget in House Bill 1003. So 2 BCI agents will be coming to the City of Grand Forks to work in the northeast region of the state. Under water projects, House Bill 1020 is the water resources budget that has $205 million set aside for River Valley water supply and $40 million for municipal water projects over the next biennium. As we take a peek here, community and economic development, there's quite a few bills here that I want to touch on. House Bill 1332, I see we have Representative Haggard here who did heavy lifting on that bill. Thank you, sir. That was the Agristo bill, if you will, that provided $30 million of line of credit through Bank of North Dakota, forgivable line of credit for large ag facilities in the state of North Dakota. Part is we were looking to get Agristo, just get it used for infrastructure and stuff, so that was a good bill. Before I touch on property taxes, I do want to talk about the Children's Museum. House Bill 1013 was the Department of Public Instruction budget. In the 2023 legislative session, that is what had the funding for the Children's Museum last session. That Children's Museum was in that budget this session as well, with $5 million going to the Grand Forks Children's Museum. That was amended out of that budget. And then as you take a look at Senate Bill 2018, that's Department of Commerce budget, $1 million was amended into that budget for the Grand Forks Children's Museum, but that $1 million has a catch. That $1 million is not available until the Strategic Investment and Improvements Fund, the SIF fund that you hear referenced at the state level, gets to $402 million through revenues over the next biennium. I mentioned the Prairie Dog and how there was, they moved the city bucket forward because there's concern that buckets towards the end won't fill this biennium. That SIF bucket's at the end. So that $402 million that needs to fill for the Children's Museum to get their $1 million allocation, there's some questions and concerns and a lot of unknowns with that. So the Children's Museum may not, if they get that money, they won't get it towards the end of this next biennium if they get it at all. So just wanted to keep you privy of that one. And then, of course, House Bill 1176, that's our property tax reform, relief, many different ways to look at it. The primary residence tax credit went up from $500 to $1,600. People still need to apply. So we will communicate that, assuming the state's going to communicate like they have in the past. Coming up here, they have to apply for that $1,600 and then that 3% cap on property tax revenues for cities, counties, school districts, and whatnot. So that's the property tax budget. With that, you'll see towards the end of the report, I included regional priorities, chamber, EDC, the county, UND, what came out of the legislative session for those entities as well. We were tracking those bills, but we didn't. We had skin in the game, but no skin in the game, if you will, with those. We were a partner. So I highlighted some of those. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for, they sent an email out earlier this month with a lot of this information. So with that, I am open to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstrom. Questions regarding the legislative summary? Seeing none, thank you for all your work during the legislative session.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item 2.2. It's a presentation, downtown parking update.
Good evening, Andrea Edwardson, Planning Manager with the City of Grand Forks. Attached to your staff would have been a staff report, or not a staff report, excuse me, just a summary of the downtown enforcement we've done. You'll recall back in January of this year, we requested and you approved to shift downtown parking enforcement from PD to interstate parking, doing business as Dakota Parking. They started out in January. They went through initial hiring process in January, probably about mid-February, got a patroller on board. That patroller did their training. First 2 weeks was like a soft opening for the February issuing warnings. With those warnings came flyers that also educated folks on where they could park, how the enforcement policies were changing, where free parking might be if necessary. And then March is probably where they hit the full-time, full-bore ticket enforcement downtown. So it's about late June here, so we've had about 3.5 months of full-time enforcement. And so what your presentation summary there indicated was a whole bunch of data and tables that I won't go item by item, but just hit the highlights of. And so monthly revenue impacts, mobile pay, daily transactions, so your short-term pay-by-app opportunities in the ramps. Our full-time enforcement has shifted folks to parking in the ramps, as we would like to see. So that mobile pay and daily rate has gone up, you can see, from 24 to 25. Same with monthly permits, again, from 24 to 25, we've seen a decent increase there. Significant increase, again, we're changing the behavior, getting folks from on-street to the ramps. The ticket violations also have significantly increased, though the table included in your report, this would have been all ticket violations across the city. Streets and Public Works has done a consistent job with their street maintenance ticketing over the years, so the increase we've kind of collaborated is being contributed to that 38% that interstate parking is writing. But I do want to make sure to emphasize that our goal is not for ticket violations to see a continued increase. Right, it's not for us to go after and harass folks unnecessarily, right? It's about compliance. You have that initial peak, it drops down once you get compliance and kind of levels off. So that's the goal with violations. It's not to continue to see long-term increases like we want to see with mobile pay and monthly permits. And again, it's just about changing that behavior, the education outreach. Interstate Parking launched a website probably about last fall to help with that marketing and education piece. The staff or the presentation goes into the different data behind the website, gives us a better idea of where folks are coming from and how to maintain that marketing and educating piece going forward. The that would be the transactional quantitative data, right? Everybody has feelings about parking, typically mostly negative. So we wanted to balance the data with some qualitative. So Dakota Parking, Interstate Parking put out a community survey in preparation for this mid-year update that you guys requested before. Not going to go into the whole survey, but in general, I was pleasantly surprised to see more positive feedback than negative. Given the construction in the corporate ramp, the North 4th Street construction, the full-time enforcement actually requiring compliance, I thought we'd see a lot more negative feedback. But overall, we've seen a positive trend in support of the effort. So then we did want to highlight CSOs. The primary request for us shifting this was CSOs had a lot of on their plate prior. They respond to animal controls, bailiff duties, other random calls for service, things like that. We wanted to highlight, since Interstate's taken over their duties, what has PD been able to do well, and what it is what they were doing, but doing it better, right? Because they were juggling a whole bunch of things before. Take that one piece out for Interstate to do timed enforcements. PD is now able to do their other responsibilities much more efficiently, much more effectively, much more timely. So the benefit of having Interstate Parking too is that we get industry recommendations. They manage a whole bunch of facilities across the Midwest and region. Part of that is recommending where we can constantly improve. Part of that is lowering expenses, improving pricing and strategies to continue that compliance and behavior for an overall downtown efficiency for parking. Signage has become a big issue or a big complaint we hear pretty frequently in terms of where those 2-hour time zones are. Wayfinding to the public parking, and then the free parking as well. We have an intern doing a lovely job of inventorying all the existing signs downtown. He's almost completed with that, and we'll begin to make recommendations for where to reduce or increase signage as necessary. Then they also, Interstate, different communities do fee structures differently. North Dakota is not permitted to do metered parking by Century Code, and the way parking typically works is that your on-street parking is priced higher than your ramp parking to encourage folks to the ramps. We don't have metered parking abilities, so you do that with ticket violations. Right now, our ticket violations for on-street are 20 and our ramps are 40. So we're actually kind of opposite of what we would want to do to encourage people to the ramps. So we'll be working through that philosophy with staff, have to meet with PD and talk through that. Any changes to fee violations would be a code amendment through City Council. So anything we would do there would be another recommendation brought to this body. So there's also the ability to do step violations to get after your repeat offenders, to escalate the permit or the violation fee after so many offenses. So there's certainly things we could do to streamline those violations. We'll continue to work for that and bring any recommendations for you. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Edwardson. Ms. Lunsky, comments?
So because of the state law, we can't use passport on the streets ever or without a change?
No, we would count that as metered parking. Essentially what the Century Code is getting at is paying for on-street parking. And so we wouldn't be able to do that.
Even if the first 2 hours were free or?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lunsky. Ms. Losowski.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, we agreed that all of the parking downtown is 2-hour parking, correct?
Nope, we have different areas of town, or different areas where 1 hour has historically, the area outside when we talked about it last fall, the area around Franklin, for the most part, that was 2 hour. There might have been some 30-minute on one side on 2nd Avenue, but we do have a variation between 30-minute, 1 hour, and 2 hour parking throughout downtown.
I thought when we agreed to talk about this that we were changing it all to 2-hour parking, because I know like in front of the gun shop, it used to be 1 hour parking, and we agreed that we would, to make it standardized in our area, that it would all be 2-hour parking. So now I'm really confused about where exactly these different time zones are.
Sure, and we do have a map of the different time zones. I believe council requested that the spot in front of the Demers there was shifted to 2 hour. I believe that did change. I'll go back and make sure. I believe you had that as part of your motion last fall. So I'll make sure that was actually implemented. But we do have different spots downtown where we do need to, like City Hall, for instance, has 30-minute in front of ours.
Yeah, right in
because
front,
of utility
but that was
billing. Yep.
kind of it. And I guess I would like to see the map on where you have these different times, because if we want to make it as easy as possible for people in our community to park downtown, it should all be the same so people aren't wondering. I understand, like in front of City Hall, there's 30 minutes so people can drop off their bills and do their stuff quickly, but I thought we were switching everything to 2-hour parking, and so I would like to see a map brought forward with where you currently at on the different times within our community. And if we are not all at 2-hour parking besides the area in front of our City Hall, I think we should be uniform around our downtown area. And not only that, why is it fair that certain businesses get to choose the amount of time that, is outside of their business?
So it isn't about, when we do get a request to change the time zone, there are multiple people involved in reviewing the request. It typically facilitates in our office just because interstate parking sometimes is the first one to get the call. We work with police department and engineering to figure out if the time zone makes sense for the block face. Because you're right, it isn't about the individual business, it's about the block face and how the turnover on the block is capable of either accommodating or not. Sometimes the request is denied because the majority has to function over the one.
So although I swore we voted on us all having 2-hour parking downtown, you're telling me that for them to change the time of the parking, that it just has to go through you guys and be approved and not back to us?
Typically, the one-off request, we brought the multiple blocks request forward, but the one-off request we typically review administratively. If we were changing a whole block policy, we would bring that forward. But like we've gotten requests for like a loading zone in front of my business, and that request is an admin review, goes through the process. Typically, we don't approve loading requests because the purpose of alleys is to be loading and unloading in alleys. So those individual requests we have not brought forward to the council and kept as a more administrative review policy process.
Yeah, I guess I would like to see the map on where we started before our vote last fall, where we voted for 2-hour parking and where we are at today, and what has changed since we voted on 2-hour parking to what you guys are doing administratively.
So nothing, I don't believe we've changed administratively a time zone. The 2-hour parking here was just specific streets listed in that staff report. I believe it was North 3rd for a certain section, University 2nd and 4th. It was not for all of downtown, but we can share the existing parking map with you and provide that.
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions?
Council President Sandy, if I could say a word of thanks to Andrea. She's really done a great job with parking downtown, terrific job with the ramps, and she's taken over the job of no good deed will go unpunished. So I'm really thankful for all the professionalism and hard work that she's really brought to this item. So I think we're in much better shape than we were before she put her fingerprints on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Thank you, Ms. Edwardson. Appreciate it. Okay. Under item 3, discussion items, 3.1, request from Johnny's Lounge to transfer its Class 1 alcoholic beverage license to RG Investments. Any concerns about
Move
transferring?
approval.
Thank you by Osowski. Second by Berg. Thank you. Any further comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Similarly, there's a request from BGF Inc., formerly Vinyl Taco, for an extension to transfer Class 4 alcoholic beverage license and approved site authorization twice for development homes.
I move approval.
Moved by Osowski, second by Veen. Further comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.3, bid award for project 8915, District 790, the reconstruction of 30th Avenue South from 34th to 38th Street. Mr. Lieberman, good evening.
Good evening, President Sandy, members of the committee. We opened bids for this project last Thursday. We had 5 bidders. The low bid was presented by Op Construction. They were 28% under engineering estimate, so we are continuing to receive outstanding bids. So with that tonight, we are recommending award to Op Construction and a budget amendment for this project.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. Comments or questions? Mr. Veen moves approval, second by Friedolf. Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.4. Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. Bid award for city projects 8848, District 365, 8849, District 620, 8966, District 621, utilities for 47th Avenue South, South 30th Street, and South 34th Street from Columbia Road to South 34th Street, and 45th Avenue South, 47th Avenue South. Mr. Danielson, good evening.
We got another construction project here that we're looking to bid out. It's the utilities on 47th Avenue as we start to build west towards the interchange. We opened bids last week, and we actually bid this project with two different alternatives. It only applies to the storm sewer project. We bid it with two different pipe materials, reinforced concrete pipe, which is what we've been using for decades in the city, and then polypropylene pipe would have been the other alternative. We're looking at the polypropylene pipe as a long-term potential cost-saving pipe material for storm sewer, so we're just starting to dip our toes into that market just to see kind of where the prices lie. We opened 6 bids for this project, and the low bid for both of those alternatives on the storm sewer was from the same contractor, Robinson Excavating. Their bid for the reinforced concrete pipe was their lower bid, and that's what we're used to. It's what we see on all of our projects anyway. So we're looking to move forward with Robinson Excavating as our low bidder. They were at about 2.4 million, which is 34% under the engineer's estimate. So like Ed said, continuing to see a really favorable market for our bids right now.
Wow, that's fantastic. Anyone have any comments or questions?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Friedolf, is there a second? By Ms. Linsky. Thank you so much. Nice to see you tonight, by the way. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Danielson. Item 3.5, expand special assessment district for 8921 District 612, Highway 81 and associated areas sanitary sewer phase 3. Mr. Danielson.
Thank you, President Sandy, members of the committee. So this is a project that we've already bid out this year. It's part of the Highway 81 development area that we've been working on for the past couple of years now. This is the sanitary project that we're constructing this year. We received a request from some of the property owners that would have been included in a project that's coming up in the next year or two for that development area, asking if we could expedite their piece of that project into this year's construction project through a change order on the current project. We took a look at it, looked at some of the logistics with getting it into this project, making sure that our contractor could get it done this year, that it made sense with our funding sources. You'll recall that we're not special assessing any of these projects, but we are using a state revolving fund loan. So that requires that we have a special assessment district in place. All of those pieces seem to align pretty well for us that we can actually get this into the project. But because we have these assessment districts created for these projects for the special funding that we're using, we have to amend the district that we have for the current project so that we can include this expanded area. So tonight we're just looking to expand the existing special assessment district that we have for this year's project to include work that would have been included in a future project in the next year or two. And then we'd come back in probably the next cycle with a change order to amend the current contract to include that work as well.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for Mr. Danielson? Moved by Weigel, second by Berg. Further comments, Ms. Berg?
Yes. Is this going to, do we have a budget for this? I understand that bids are coming in low, so it's probably a great idea to move forward sooner.
So because these projects are all being funded through a state revolving fund loan, they're all being taken care of on a loan basis, which is, it's kind of complicated with the funding, but we create a special assessment district, assess ourselves, and then pay it back through a revolving fund loan utilizing our utility rates. So it'll all be accounted kind of backwards through that process.
Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Danielson. Item 3.6, accept funding for project 8981 reconstruction of North 4th Street. Good evening.
President Sandy, members of the committee, we applied for the next phase of urban grad program to do with the block in front of City Hall here. I'm here on behalf of engineering to accept the funding award or approve any necessary budget amendments and proceed with project development. This project is slated for fiscal year 28. Our city share is anticipated at $660,000. This is just another beautification of downtown. Any questions?
Any questions from Mr. Hunter?
Move approval.
Moved by Osowski, second by Berg. Further comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item 3.7, purchase of non-revenue service vehicles from the state bid, declare vehicles being replaced surplus and authorize public sale through Gov Deals. Good evening. Mr. Bergman, who do you have with you tonight?
I have with me the interim manager for our department. Hopefully she can take over and I can step back.
Great. Good evening.
So I'm going to let her handle this for you.
Perfect.
Evening, President Sandy and committee members. Cities Area Transit is requesting the approval to purchase 3 replacement non-revenue service vehicles off the North Dakota state bid. And then staff would also like to have permission to dispose of the vehicles on Gov Deals once the replacement vehicles are ready.
Any questions from Ms. Slominski?
No comment.
Yes,
How much longer do we have Dale for? I feel like I
That's a
keep being,
debatable question,
I
yeah.
keep being told that you're gonna be gone and you keep showing up, so.
When you see the last council meeting that I'm at, you'll know.
Oh, okay. Well,
That's when I
just,
officially sign everything over to her.
okay, and you'll tell us then?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. I move approval.
I'll be running then.
Moved by Osowski, second by Lunsky. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you and good luck. Excuse me. Item 3.8, Northern Plains nitrogen update and letter of intent agreement extension.
Move approval.
Moved by Weigel, second by Berg.
I have a question.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Ms. Osowski, comment?
This is the same thing that we do, every 6 months? Is that how often
You are
this comes
correct.
out?
And actually, Mr. Mackey, I know we get to see him every 5 or 6 months to extend this letter of intent for Northern Plains Nitrogen. But I did speak with Mr. Mackey last week. He does have a few updates on the financing side. I have seen him in Bismarck over the last legislative session a couple times too. So I think he's got a brief update on where he's at with the financing of this, over $3 billion project.
And what exactly are we kind of, just the letter of intent agreement, correct?
It's a standard letter of
And
intent.
The standard?
Yeah.
And I guess I'm wondering how long we're gonna keep doing this, approving it and waiting 6 months and approving it. I mean, at one point, he's gonna have to make a decision. So,
I think, I don't think anyone knows that better than Mr. Mackey in that matter. So it is a letter of intent to provide them mainly wastewater reuse from our wastewater treatment plant, some potable water and stormwater. The main issue is the wastewater reuse that would be provide the supply for this particular project. I think if there were a project on a horizon that wanted to use wastewater reuse as part of their water supply, we would have some serious contemplations. I think as long as they continue to make positive progress, we're not out anything at this point in time. We do have Epitome Energy is intended if they do move forward using wastewater reuse, but that's a supply probably around 300,000 gallons per day. With NPN, that's much larger. You're talking about 6 million gallons per day. So if it does move forward, there's lots of hoops to jump through, but it would be quite an impactful project, not only for Grand Forks, but the entire region. So maybe with that, Larry, if you wouldn't mind, I know you're in Brandon, Manitoba. Could you provide us an update about kind of progress you've made over the last 6 months?
Absolutely. We went out for a cash call to raise money from our existing investors, our past investors, and we're successful in raising money to hire an investment banker, which we likely should have done years ago. We hired an investment banker called Hamilton and Clark. They are very impressive, and we've been working with them now for a few months, developing the financial package to send to potential investors, which will be in excess of 100 entities. which is quite a lot. We've also revised the scope of the project, made it simpler, and brought the capex of the project down. It is now just north of $2 billion. We're going to produce 1 million tons of urea, granular urea, and enough ammonia to provide feedstock to the urea plant. And excuse me, we've done a lot of work with our financial model, found we were double dipping, charging for some things twice. So that's why we're able to bring the cost of the project down. We're very confident that Hamilton and Clark are going to be able to bring us a significant investment. We haven't asked them to raise the entire $2+ billion. We've asked them to raise enough money to update our feed study to reflect the cost and the engineering requirements for the simplified project. Part of the money, the most of it will go for engineering to update the feed, but we also will be approaching you to start working on a development agreement. That's what I have for now on updates, which I think pretty substantial to where we were previously.
I guess a question that I have, and do you, like, why can't you come back to us when it's time and we can do a letter of intent, or does he need this to move forward?
I can answer that very easily. Nobody's going to invest in a $2.2 billion project if we don't have enough water to feed the plant. The plant requires 5,000 gallons per minute of makeup water. And without that, there's no plant. So we have to have this agreement.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. Appreciate you being here as always. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Mackey? There is already a motion and a second on the floor. Thank you, though. I appreciate the enthusiasm, right? Any other comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Osowski dissents. Thank you. Item 3.9, River Valley Water Supply Project. Mr. Phelan.
Hey, Council President Sandy, we have our consultants here this evening. Mr. Brian Nazarenas, our legal counsel on the Red River Valley Water Supply Project, is here. Also, our technical experts from Precision Water are here, Mr. Shane Coors and Mr. Patrick Noah are here, and they're going to give you a project update. Importantly, this comes as a really important time. We've been working on our review over the last year, and thanks for hiring both Mr. Nazarenas and Mr. Coors and Mr. Noah. They've done a really great job and pointed out a lot of things as part of us looking at this project participation agreement for the project. And Mr. Bernstrom was talking about the Red River Valley Water Supply Project. We were fortunate enough for the state of North Dakota to continue to fund the project. In this case, in this next biennium, is at $205 million. The users, to include Grand Forks, we need to match that at 20%. Our share of that, 20% of that 205, we're about 17% of the project. And so that's a significant amount. The other benefit that we've had is the Bank of North Dakota has set up a loan fund, so we get a 40-year term at 2%, and that's awfully hard financing to find. So we've really been benefited by the state of North Dakota. Again, Representative Hagert's in the back, so without the state of North Dakota, we wouldn't have a project, so we're really thankful for that. Two things that are in front of you. We said we'd bring back the project participation agreement. They're going to talk about some of the things we ought to know as we work our way through it. The other thing is, because our project participation agreement is not going to be reviewed and approved in time, you've approved up to date, you've approved interim financing agreements up to Series E. And so there is going to be a Series F that's going to come before you, where we're going to be asked to approve our 20% cost share of our 17%, which is a big deal, and approve loan documents and all those sorts of things. Up to this date, The city council has approved financing, debt financing as part of the project. We've paid cash for some of the earlier rounds. And so we're really at an important time of looking at what our nomination will be as part of the overall project as we continue to make progress on this project, which, is anticipated to be completed in 2032. So we've made a lot of progress. We have worked really closely with LAWA, our Lake Agassiz Water Authority, and the city of Fargo. And so you're going to see some suggestions that we have that are different than what you've seen before of us taking more local control at a strategic location and, having us take more of our law in our own hands and things that make sense for us long term. So with that, I'd ask our team to come up and with Mr. Nazarenas starting, and then our other folks will join thereafter.
Thank you, Todd. Good evening.
Good evening.
Excuse me. Thanks for letting me come up here and make the presentation. I've enjoyed working with Mayor Baczynski and Todd and Dan greatly. It's been an interesting project. And a lot of my presentation is going to provide foundation for the presentation that Shane Coors and Patrick Noe are going to do. So just as an reintroduction for myself, I practiced water law and related environmental law for my entire career. I'm out of Colorado, but I've worked in other western states and then also in Oklahoma, which is more of a Midwestern, southern, western kind of an interesting state. And you engaged me last fall to provide legal assistance regarding the Red River Valley Water Supply Project and the PPA as well. So the work that I've undertaken to date, reviewed and analyzed the draft project participation agreement, PPA, investigated and analyzed the legal status of Grand Forks' Lake Ashtabula, Thompson Acker water rights, and I'll get into those in a little bit more detail in a minute, and helped formulate a strategy to protect those rights. I've interacted with Fargo's attorney, who I've actually worked with for many years, decades, who's also out of Colorado, to help develop and further a unified Fargo Grand Forks approach on these matters. And I've advised the mayor and Todd Phelan and Dan about these matters and assisted them in developing strategies for interactions with Garrison Diversion, LAWA, the United States Corps of Engineers, and the North Dakota Division of Water Resources. And I've also interacted with Precision on these items. So there are two major items that I'd like to discuss and bring to your attention tonight. The first is the Red River Valley Water Supply Project, what I'm calling the local control issue. And then the second is the Lake Ashtabula Thompson Acker water rights. So really to provide foundation for both of these issues, I'm going to use this map here and kind of walk it through from west to east. This is the Missouri River. And the Red River Valley Water Supply Project would have two alternate points of diversion out of the Missouri River, one at this intake, and then the other through McCluskey Canal, which would take water to the pipeline here. And the pipeline would take water from the Missouri River Basin over into the Hudson Bay Basin, or Lake Agassiz, the historic Lake Agassiz area. And this area here is the Cheyenne River outfall, and then that's a delivery into the Cheyenne River. And then downstream is Lake Ashtabula, and then Cheyenne River runs south and then over to Fargo, where it hits the Red River, and then here we are up at Grand Forks. So that's that geography lesson. If you're familiar with it, then thank you for bearing with me, but that's to provide some foundation for what we're going to go into. So the Garrison Diversion Conservancy District was originally established in the 1940s to deal with or work with the Bureau of Reclamation for this Missouri River Basin project. That again was going to take water out of the Missouri River and Lake Audubon over to eastern North Dakota. And it was originally intended as an irrigation project. And the history behind it, you could basically write a novel about it. It's largely controlled by irrigation interests in North Dakota. Irrigation interests in western North Dakota. But over time, as the project evolved, it evolved from an irrigation project into more of a municipal and industrial project with water for eastern North Dakota. And so the local control issue goes to having project control by the eastern project users of the operation of the project within the eastern part of the state. And that goes to LAWA, which Todd referenced. So LAWA was created by the North Dakota legislature to distribute project water to eastern North Dakota water users. And Grand Forks, Fargo, and other LAWA users have seats on the LAWA Board of Directors, and voting procedures are being developed to protect their interests. So that's the heart of the local control issue, whether it's Garrison Diversion controlling and operating the whole thing, or whether Garrison Diversion, which is the solution, will be responsible for the Missouri River portion of the operations, so this area over here, and then delivering water from the Missouri River over to the Cheyenne River outfall, at which point LAWA would be responsible for delivering project water to users in the Cheyenne and Red River basins, including Grand Forks and Fargo. And then LAWA would also be responsible for storing project water in Lake Ashtabula. So that's the solution that the Grand Forks leadership team is working towards. So Lake Ashtabula is the second issue that I'd like to brief you on, and it's a historically complicated issue. Here on this photograph here shows the dam at Lake Ashtabula, which is called Bald Hill Dam, and then over on the left are the different water permits that were granted by the state in the 1950s for storage in Lake Ashtabula. And you can see Grand Forks has a 20,023 acre feet storage permit for 28.81%. So it's the second largest permit amount of any of the other of the entities, second to Fargo. So the history, again, is fairly complicated on this, but I'm going to hit the high points. Lake Ashtabula is a United States Army Corps of Engineers reservoir. When Congress authorized the construction of Lake Ashtabula, also known as Bald Hill Dam, in 1944, it required local interests to contribute to the funding of the project. In the early 1950s, Grand Forks, Fargo, and other North Dakota potential water users in the Cheyenne and Red River basins contributed to the funding for Lake Ashtabula. And then in the 1960s, the state awarded those water permits that I had on the prior screen to the contributing entities. Grand Forks received the second largest allocation, but the most senior priority, which is an important issue. And the storage we're talking about here is native flow water. It's not water from the Missouri River. It's water in the Cheyenne River, and that's an important distinction. Unfortunately, the Army Corps of Engineers never issued a water storage contract for the permit holders to store water there. This is an item from the past that why that didn't occur at the time is a mystery, but we don't know the answer to that. The state of North Dakota has never established how it will administer and shepherd deliveries of water from Lake Ashtabula to the holders of the Thompson-Acker water rights. You recall the map again, it's a pretty substantial distance from Lake Ashtabula to Fargo to Grand Forks. And the Thompson-Acker account holders have never reached an agreement between themselves on how their accounts are going to be administered. And in addition, there's no agreement in place in terms of how project water Red River Valley Water Supply Project water, which is going to come from the Missouri River, be delivered over into the Cheyenne River, how that's going to be stored in Lake Ashtabula in a manner that doesn't interfere with Thompson Acker water rights. So Grand Forks and Fargo are working together and engaging the North Dakota Department of Water Resources and other Thompson Acker water rights holders to address and resolve these issues. So in conclusion, as far as my presentation, these are important foundational issues. LAWA should have control over the local operations of the Red River Valley Water Supply Project from the delivery point on the Cheyenne River down the Red River, and including the storage of project water in Lake Ashtabula. And then an acceptable agreement needs to be reached with the Corps of Engineers, the North Dakota Department of Water Resources, and other Thompson Acker water users regarding the storage, administration, and delivery of water from the Thompson Acker water rights. So that's my presentation. I can turn it over.
If I have questions from him, should I do them now?
Certainly, I think we should do that now, yes. Mr. Veen, yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and thanks for everybody. I think we've come a long way here with getting a project participation agreement to something that we can all work with, both LAWA, the cities, the users, and Garrison. A couple questions, though, and probably Todd wouldn't be surprised. Have you done a risk assessment to understand what all the risks we are up against with this project?
Actually, Shane and Patrick are going to start talking about a risk assessment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's going to be very critical. The second piece, and maybe that follows afterwards too, is you made the determination we're going to take over the operations part from Lake Ashtabula going forward.
From the delivery to the Cheyenne River on.
From the delivery to the Cheyenne.
That's the goal that people are working towards.
Can you further explain why that is the best break point for the project?
Yeah. So I think I would say two things. First, operating the project on the Missouri River, which Garrison Diversion would do, that's part of their original mandate. That's a complicated issue. It doesn't make any sense for LAWA to take that over. So Garrison Diversion has the skill set, proper authority for that. Once it's delivered into the Cheyenne River, then it really is more of a local user issue in terms of understanding how it's going to integrate with the Thompson Acker accounts, which are local user accounts. And then there are going to be issues about return flows from Fargo of project water that will require negotiation between Grand Forks and Fargo, as well as interaction with LAWA on that. Plus LAWA has, as I think I said in my presentation, has seats on Grand Forks and Fargo have seats on the LAWA board. So as local users, they'll be more directly involved in the governance through that entity.
Yeah, if I could, I think what we've accomplished on the local board is obviously very significant. The question I ask is, and partially on the risks, if there are operational risks with the pipeline, you're going to be pumping water, you can have water hammer, you can have issues with the pipeline. Who owns or who would be responsible for the cost of, say, a pipe failure?
I think that level of detail in terms of turning over responsibility hasn't been completely negotiated yet, but through what I touched on, everything upstream from the discharge point would be the pipeline.
Right.
So that would be Garrison Diversion, those components of it.
Yeah, and they will operate it under the agreement in the project participation agreement, right?
That would need to still be negotiated, but that's the conceptual approach that Fargo and Grand Forks and I think LAWA are heading towards. Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that because the city has paid for it, the pipeline, but it will be operated by somebody else, and I'm hoping the risks then goes with whoever is operating it.
Yep.
That's kind of what I'm trying to get to.
And I've had conversations with Ken on this, and his thoughts are, should it be further forward? I mean, should we go even further towards operations of the treatment plant and other parts, knowing that we've paid for that? If it breaks from them, now we've got to pay for it. So why just stop there? Why not go further as far as Lawa's operation, considering that 25% cost is ours? So we've had that conversation because we know there's risk of who's operating the plant. Certainly cities have great expertise in operating a water treatment plant. We've been doing it for a long time.
I was hearing the question from the different angle.
Does that help?
I hear
Yeah.
it. Sorry. I was hearing the question from a different angle. I think ultimately it comes down to it's a political compromise. I think that's my assessment of things. And so it might make more sense to push it upstream, but I think the at least, and I'm not the politician, I'm the hired lawyer to come in, but I think where we are politically is that the discharge point is the most pragmatic outcome.
Yeah, if I could, I'm just trying to understand that. I am a director on the Garrison Diversion Board, so I've been there for 16 plus years and been on LAWA for a long time. So I'm not looking for one side versus the other. I want to know what's the best for the project and ultimately what's best for the users. Because it's all about delivering water to the users, right? And making sure we have the appropriate project participation agreement to have the maximum best results. And I'm just trying to hear, it was great to have an outside person come in, take a look at this, and try to use your experience and expertise in the Colorado River and whatever to transfer over to what we're doing.
Yeah. And that would be my assessment. The cleanest point is the discharge. Understand the operational concerns you have, and maybe those are details that can continue to be discussed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right, thank you. I'll turn it over to these gentlemen.
Thank you.
City Council, thanks for the opportunity to present to you guys today. I'm going to echo Brian and just say it's been a pleasure to work with the Grand Forks team here. It's a very interesting project technically. And so I'm here with Shane, who is the principal at our company, Precision Water Resources Engineering. And we're going to just give you a technical update on our review of the PPA, Thompson Account Water, Acker Water, and the Red River Valley Water Supply Project. Just a brief introduction on our company. We're out of Colorado, Loveland, Colorado. Our motto is stewardship through technology. We work with local, regional, state, and federal water agencies to develop technical solutions to water management across the western United States. So we've worked in places, varying from western Nevada, Lake Tahoe, Truckee Basin. We work with the state of Utah on Colorado River issues, and we've done work on the Rio Grande River, where Shane was an expert witness on a Supreme Court case. About a year ago, we were hired by Grand Forks to conduct a review from a technical perspective of the PPA of the Red River Valley Water Supply Project. And so that's why we're here today. Our goal is to update you guys on the work we've completed specifically to review Grand Forks' nomination for the Red River Valley Water Supply Project. And I want to be clear about what we mean by nomination, and it's the amount of water that Grand Forks has elected to be supplied by the project, which translates to the amount of financial commitment that you as a city will have to the project. So when you're looking at nomination, there's really two key questions that must be answered to get to this nomination. The first one is, what's your future demand going to be? So you look at the project, lifetime and what it's planned to exist through, which I think is 2075, and you want to know, well, what's the demand of Grand Forks going to be in 2075? So you have to make a projection and an estimate of that. So that's step one. And step two is you have to assess what we call the firm yield of sources, and I'll get into what firm yield means later in this presentation. But essentially, what can your current supplies without the project give you in times of drought to meet that future demand? And so there's a really simple equation where you look, nomination is really going to be related to the future demand minus what your current sources can provide you. And so I'm going to come back to this equation a few times in this presentation. So starting with that future demand, you want to look at what you currently use, and that's around 3.1 billion gallons per year of water pumped from the river to meet your local demands. What's going to influence that in the future? There's two main drivers. The first would be population growth, more people, more water use, and then industrial growth. Industrial growth can and tend to have a higher use of water. One new industrial user might use a disproportionate amount of water compared to a population of 60,000. An example being Agristo, which is projected to use between 0.6 and 1.2 billion gallons per year by 2030. That's 20 to 38% of your current water demand. So that's a significant, binary stepwise increase in the demand for the city. So here I have a plot that I'm going to build on progressively, and what's shown here is a time series of your historical demands going back to 1980. What you'll notice is really over the last 20 years, the demand, it hasn't really grown a ton. It decreased a little bit, and it's in the late 2000s. And there's a couple of driving factors that we've learned about, including the 97 flood, including downsizing of the Air Force Base. And I think that there's been some enhancements to the treatment processes that conserve some water as well. And so when we look at this plot and we add in, this projected 2030 demand for Agristo, which is the yellow dot with the black outline, you'll see a pretty substantial growth in water demand for the city. And so just putting that extra use into perspective. Another thing we've looked at is in 97, AE2S, another consulting firm, came up with a projection. And so we use that to sort of validate and look at where is Grand Forks' demand compared against that projection from 97. And so that's the green line here. And as you can see, historically, you stayed below that green line, that projection from 97. But if we look into the future and look at what the city's demand will look like with Agristo, you're slightly above. And that yellow dot really represents the higher end of use for Agristo. So that projection was, I would call somewhat a relatively good projection. I'm going to add another projection to the plot, and it's going to be this red line. And this is looking at a projection that was a demand projection that was done by Garrison Diversion, looking at sizing the pipeline and users' nominations. And so, what you'll notice is this demand goes up and to the right at a pretty aggressive pace. In saying in 2075, the demand would be somewhere around 9.4 billion gallons. And so, we're working with the city right now to assess, what does a appropriate future demand look like. And there, like with the industrial user of Agristo, there is room to grow really quickly. And so we're trying to estimate what's a realistic future demand in 2075 for your water. This is another vantage into looking at future demand projections. Here on this table, I've put 4 cities across the Midwest that have similar populations or slightly bigger populations, and what they assessed at their cities for a 50-year projection from a given start year. The column I want you to pay attention to is the last column, which I've labeled demand growth multiple. And that is really the 50-year demand divided by over the current demand. And so how many times is your demand going to grow in the next 50 years, essentially? And so you'll see that these numbers are really between 1.3 and 1.9. For that AE2S projection, it was at about 1.85. So the future demand would be 1.85 times the current demand at its 50-year time horizon. And when we look at that Garrison demand projection, it's up at 3.04. And really, this is meant to show that this is a very aggressive demand projection. And so those are the types of things that we are reviewing in this project. So moving on, I want to talk about the other part of that equation, the firm yield of sources. When we look at your current sources, and that's I want to make sure you guys have a good understanding of what your current sources are. The first source is the Red River permit that the city of Grand Forks has, and that's just water flowing down the river. The second permit will be over on the western side of the basin, and that's the Lake Ashtabula permit that allows you to take water in the Cheyenne Basin and store it in that reservoir, and Brian talked about that Thompson Acker count, and then use that water in a time of need when there's not enough water in the Red River or the Red Lake River. So that being the third current source of Grand Forks water supply is the Red Lake River permit, which you have with the state of North Dakota. So water permits specify a maximum annual volume you can use. This is one limitation on how much water you can get out of these permits. If I add those 3 permits up, it comes out to 21 billion gallons per year, which is it's over 6 times more than your annual demand. Now, that's not the whole story, because permits, what they yield is a lot different than what their maximum volume is, and it's dependent on factors like hydrology. Is there enough water in the river to take? There's also basin administrative and operational criteria of Lake Ashtabula and working with the Army Corps of Engineers to release that water out of the dam. And so what we've looked at is really what we call firm yield. And what we want to identify is how much water in the most stressing year of data that we have going back to 1930, how much water can that permit provide? Because that's going to identify how much you can expect in that year and how much you might need to fill the gap to reach that future projected demand. So now putting the future demand and the firm yield together, we can come up with an idea of nomination, and that's what we do on this next slide. On the right column, I have a preliminary firm yield estimate, and this was numbers that we gathered from the Garrison diversion modeling that we reviewed. These are preliminary, and I want to emphasize that because there's a lot of uncertainty in these numbers, and that's something that Shane's going to get into here in a minute. But the way we're trying to put demand and this firm yield together is really summarized best in this plot. And this is a dashboard that we created to look at how that firm yield is filling the gap to get up to your future projected demand. So on this plot, there's the x-axis, which is your annual demand, and the y-axis, which is also annual demand. And we're looking at these different values of demand going from small to large, left to right, and trying to identify, okay, well, how is that firm yield of each of your current sources filling that bar to get up to that demand? And so a couple of numbers I call out here is your 3.1, which is roughly your current demand. It's met by majorly, a Red Lake River permit, the Red River permit firm yield. You can work up to 6.2 billion gallons per year, met in full by all 3 permits, or partially by that Red Lake permit, the Lake Ashtabula permit in green. That 6.2 is significant because that's that factor of 2 multiple of future demand that those other projections were similar to. And then everything to the right are these more aggressive demand growths. And so what we're trying to do is really reduce the uncertainty on each of those firm yields to identify what's that gray bar gap. And I should say, too, the Red Lake River is a really important river to the city, as we've come to learn. Water quality, it helps meet city demand in a way that's very important, cheaper to treat. That number right there of 0.1 billion gallons per year is we're pretty confident that it's off, and we're doing a lot of work to try to really get a confident understanding of what that yield would be in a very dry year. With that, I'm going to pass it to Shane, and he's going to talk about uncertainty a little bit more.
Okay. And I'm going to land the plane here pretty quickly. There's just a couple more slides. But so we want to put all these things together, the supply and the demand nexus. And what we've got right now, in our opinion, is kind of have an unacceptable level of uncertainty. What do each of these sources yield for the city? There's too much that's not known to be able to answer that question correctly. Those bars are great, but we'd like to have a little more certainty on what the values are. And so some of the things that we want to do going forward is to reduce that uncertainty so that we know more clearly what that number is. So talking about the Red River permit, we're going to analyze and agree upon what it would look like to come into an agreement with Fargo for bypass amounts and return flow amounts that Grand Forks could count on in the future in a dry scenario. How much water can we count on coming down the Red River? That is a area of, that needs some attention and will bring certainty, from kind of the bullseye idea. I should have said this at the beginning, but bringing it down to the center where we really know where it's at. That would be the first area we'd like to make some effort. The second one would be to engage North Dakota Department of Water Resources to make sure that they're prepared and to understand how they plan to administer these water rights. Just because you have water rights, you got to make sure that it gets there. And that would be the job of the state to do that. And so we need to engage with them to see what their plans are for that. Moving over to the Lake Ashtabula permit, which is very important, is to also engage the North Dakota Department of Water Resources to understand their position on how to prioritize the Thompson-Acker accounts. As was stated in Brian's presentation, Grand Forks has the senior permit of Thompson-Acker account on Ashtabula. Need to make sure they're going to administer it as such, that it's going to be administered as the first priority and not as a co-equal priority with the other right holders. And that's something that is not well understood at this point, but needs to be pursued and engaged. And then engage the Army Corps of Engineers on their water control manual update, which is basically their manual for how they operate the reservoir. It actually has a great bearing on Grand Forks and their reliability of future water, how the Corps operates that reservoir. And that's a process. It's a process that can be engaged. It's a process where you can advocate for the way it frankly ought to be done, and Brian's done a lot of that, and we've done a lot of that, and we think there's definitely an important role to engage that process in the best interests of really understanding and firming up the yield from the Ashtabula permit. And then finally, on the Red Lake River permit, is just, we really don't think that number that came out of the Garrison model is a good number. We think there's probably more water available from the Red Lake, but we need to figure out what that is. That obviously has a lot of importance to Grand Forks, so we're going to continue to work on that, bringing that. And then there are mechanisms with Minnesota to augment that permit. And so that is an avenue that's going to be explored. And then again, to engage the Corps on the water control manual update process that is underway on the Red Lake. There's definitely some room to find some certainty on the water that can be available to Grand Forks through the Red Lake River in times of drought. So our objective here is to bring more certainty to the firm yield of the city's sources going forward. And so we'd like to, propose, these are the next steps, and we're breaking them into two pieces, but going forward, we see Precision providing continued service and value to the city in two ways. One is continued technical analysis of the supply-demand nexus to better define the appropriate nomination for the city in the Red River Valley Water Supply Project. The bottom line, and Patrick explained it well, but you have a certain amount of sources and we have a projected demand, and the project, the Red River Supply Project, should meet any gap that exists. But if you don't know exactly what the gap is, you want to be as confident as you can be to understand what the gap is, to know what you need to get from that pipeline, from that project. And that's really there's a lot of technical work that needs to be done to get that number right. And then secondly is to provide technical support to the city and to its attorneys as they engage the federal and state water administration agencies in ongoing legal and administrative processes. That's a mouthful. But these processes are ongoing. You would always wish they would go faster than they do. It's a little bit painful, but there is a lot of benefit that can happen from engaging those processes and not just sitting on the sidelines and hoping it resolves well. To engage the process, to ask the questions, to advocate for Grand Forks' interests and make sure that they're doing things correctly. We've had the advantage of seeing these processes play out in other basins that are highly competitive and have a lot of issues. And so we do have some experience in that. And I think there's some value to the city if we can help be a part of engaging those processes that go forward. It's a little harder to put a firm scope around that, but to be available in that. And then I just listed them out, so I won't read the processes that I've already mentioned that are ongoing that we think there's room for Grand Forks to gain a lot of benefit from. Some of the work that we have completed is we did review the Red River Valley Water Supply Project operational plan. Our key finding was that the current operational plan lacks the level of detail and specificity required to operate and administer a project of this size and complexity. We wrote a report about it, so that's work that we have done. And then review of the Pipeline Exhibit F, State Mod model, the Garrison model. And then the key finding, our opinion on that is that there were key assumptions made in that modeling that were not well substantiated that have a big bearing on what the final answer was that came out of that. The first would just be Grand Forks' 2075 demand. You saw the red line that shot up very aggressively. You can see the import of that line. If you have a very large 2075 demand, you might have an exaggerated need for water. You've got to evaluate that, and we found that to be not entirely well substantiated. And then there was an omission of the Red Lakes from the analysis, which is a significant supply to the city, and if it was underrepresented, that would be important to know. So those were some of the things that we found in working over the past 12 months. We've written reports about them. Those are available. And finally, the original demand used to determine the preliminary nomination may be too large. These are the key takeaways. Administrative actions and technical analysis necessary to accurately determine the firm yield of permits is an important activity, kind of right in the middle of it, and want to bring that to completion. And then really, I think to summarize what is needed going forward is to reduce the uncertainty in the firm yield of the current water supply sources, and so that there can be as precisely as possible determine an accurate nomination for the pipeline. And that's where we would propose to go forward from here. So with that, we can take any questions and appreciate your time in listening to a long
Questions
presentation.
I can't remember the last names, Brian, Patrick, and Shane. Mr. Veen, comments, questions?
Well, thank you for the presentation. It was very good. I think you're doing what we had hoped you would do, is take another look at our numbers. One of the, current proposals is somewhat reliant on return flows and bypass flows from, and seem to be less reliant on the Thompson Acres. Are you seeing anything specific there that's either working or not? With that existing scenario versus what you're looking for?
I would agree that those are very important issues, and I think the Thompson Acker is water that existed before the pipeline. That's a supply that you had, and I feel like it's a little. I think we feel it's a little ill-defined. What that will actually yield in a bad year, and I think it's almost independent of the pipeline to try to figure that out and engage the Corps and North Dakota to understand how that's going to be administered. Once that is firm, I think in a perfect world, there's timeline issues here that you may not be able to do it exactly this way, but in a perfect world, you would establish that first and then think about supplementing it as needed with the pipeline, and then, the next thing would just be, then engaging with Fargo to get reliable return flows and maybe bypass amounts of project water with whatever the project is, to kind of augment on top of that. But it seems appropriate to me to first figure out the Ashtabula and the Thompson Acker and not have those be uncertain, because they're already paid for, and they're pretty ill-defined, unfortunately.
And how will you be addressing losses in that length of river to get the water here?
Yeah, very good question. That's a data-driven exercise. You got to look at what's happened, but you just have to look at the data and just see, how much of that water actually makes it and how much makes it when it's really dry.
Yeah, I can jump in on that a little because I think this is the lawyer acting like an engineer, but I think the bypass flows are a big part of that too. If your bypass flow, and I think you'd agree that the bypass flow is structured right, so that it takes into account the risk analysis on the travel times and transit losses. That's the tool, I think, to help address some of your concerns.
And do you have a factor of safety when you're doing all of this?
Sure. I think the losses have two forms. The first one would be you talk to North Dakota and make sure that they're going to shepherd the water correctly, because some losses are inappropriate, but then there are also natural losses that would occur as well. But there would be a factor of safety, of course. That's a hard number to get to sometimes, so the number will be a range, and I think you just, you choose a safe version of that.
Just one last question. Who controls the water flows out of the Red Lake River, or Red Lake?
Red Lake, that would be the Corps of
The
Engineers.
Corps.
Yeah.
That'd be the Corps of
That's
Engineers.
not controlled by the tribes?
That's a great question. I think it'd be controlled by the Corps with substantial deference to the tribe. Yeah. I haven't seen any, I have taken a look at this. I haven't seen any evidence of a tribal right or tribal control of the dam. They are revising their water control manual. That could emerge as part of that process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bean. Further comments or questions? Hearing none, thank you, gentlemen, appreciate it.
I'll make a motion
Should be an
to approve
interesting
staff recommendation.
Further
second.
conversation, yeah. Motion by Weigel, second by Osowski. Further comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Last item on the agenda is the Altru Sports and Athletic Aquatic Center thing. Thank you, Mr. Phelan.
I'm going to ask Mr. Davidson to come up here, and he's got a few slides to share with you, and then there's kind of some vague motions that we have in front of you. I think all of it is generally very good news that we didn't anticipate if you were here 6 months ago. But I think first, if Adam could go over his slides and update you on some renderings, and I'll come up and kind of go over all the bold letters that I put in there and provide some concept with that.
Mr. Davidson, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Good evening, President Sandy. Good evening, council members. So happy to be here today, especially on this week, big week, with the groundbreaking ceremony coming up here on this Friday. I thought it was a good opportunity to come back with you all here and share some updates on the project in terms of visual images and some of the things we've been able to do over the course of the last month, which represents those bid packages we keep talking about and some of those good numbers and good news we've been coming in. So I'm going to run through some of those renderings here. Some you've seen before, some will be new, and talk through those, and hopefully, follow if there's any questions, be happy to answer those. So starting off with the exterior of the building. Again, this is everything that we showed you a couple months ago in bid package 1. Again, this is the view from 42nd Avenue showing the presence of the building, the main entry, the articulation of some of the elevations of the pickleball and the natatorium, really trying to tie into some of those activation strategies that we looked at earlier and some of the design narratives that we talked to you about, again, a couple months ago. View from I-29. So here again, just some of those exterior moments, the articulation, metal panels, the looking panels, some of the glazing we have there, and overall just the appearance as it would be depicted from Interstate 29. Also seeing some of the landscaping, the infrastructure and parking as would be seen from there as well. Now, here's some of the newer ones that we haven't seen. And so the continuation of the excitement from the exterior as you approach the building, entering the building. One of the things we talked about through the design process is this pinwheel idea, that you walk in and you're immediately engaged into the environment of athletics. So as you'd walk in, to the left is pickleball, over to the upper left is going to be the turf area, over to the right is going to be the natatorium. And you come in and immensely you know where you're at and try to build that excitement of what this is in terms of athletics and sports complex. At the same time, really treating a lot of these support spaces, these kind of interstitial spaces between those activity zones, as really some of those communal zones too, areas that are going to be a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more down in terms of the activity, supporting a lot of those lounge and lobby and concession environments, and really supporting a lot of that community aspect of this facility as you would enter. Primary corridor all the way down gets you into locker rooms and those types of spaces. So again, the wayfinding is really that simplicity of the pinwheel effect, but really trying to show that engagement as soon as you enter the facility. Up here on the mezzanine level, trying to capture a lot of the program amenities that we do have in the facility. Not only do we have the full-size turf, but also the 3-lane elevated and walking track. So that was one of the good news we got in Bid Pack 1, the ability to include that program into the facility. And so seeing some of that primary circulation on the upper level, the mezzanine, to be able to look in, have some of those areas which are really important to the facility. And really, I think, one of the crown jewels is the natatorium. Seen here is going to be the 2 pools, the 5-lane, 25-yard, the 8-lane, 50-meter, the spectator seating, really everything about the pool environment. One of the things that I think I like most about this image is how it has not changed a whole lot since the SD renderings, schematic design, and that we've been able to see the vision all the way through, and maintain the budget, be under budget, and actually get more out of it. So I think it's been really something that's been important to not only the design team, but also to the city as well, and how we've been able to see this vision all the way through on the natatorium side of things. And then lastly is pickleball. And so again, same thing here. Looking at the pickle facility, some of those interior, 8 courts that we have in here, and some of those wayfinding things that we're seeing with that, and again, being able to celebrate that space. Again, everything we see here in Bid Pack 2. And I'll save that for Mr. Phelan as we talk about the results of our second bid package. Probably the more important thing to talk about here is going to be some of the future expansion opportunities, and talk a little bit about some of the conversations we've been having with the city due to the results of the second bid package and really the overall cost savings to the project. Early on, we talked about a lot of the program opportunities in terms of courts, hard courts, that'd be basketball, volleyball, sports training, athletic training, and how some of those program elements would be a part of the overall program for this facility. During the project process, we were able to highlight those as future additive alternative ideas that we wanted to focus on: the natatorium, the turf, the pickleball as the primary program elements to the facility to make sure that we attain a right-sized project and maintain budget. Those are very important. Coming to where we're at right now and being able to do that and be substantially under the budget, some of the conversations we want to bring back is, what would some of those opportunities look like if to continue those studies and to continue those explorations into those future programs. This slide here is a slide that we showed you a couple months ago, and what a future expansion opportunity look like, some of the things that we've earmarked and planned for in case the opportunity or the possibility came in a future expansion. So we did look at a couple areas. So number one here was that future west expansion. That was looking at those 2 primary programs of courts as well as the athletic training, sports training. We also did mention too some of the indoor playground areas, because that all relates back to, which I think is important, the work that was done back in 2023 during the feasibility study and what was identified as some of those program amenities that were important to the community as part of this project. This also talked about how we would deal with parking with the future expansion, how we expand that, and then also too, we did talk a little bit about the future expansion for the possibility of a UND swim and diving team. Again, just some of that future proofing. Moving forward till today, we've done a little bit more investigation, a little bit more planning about what a potential expansion would look like in terms of courts. Getting a little more dialed into what that program would look like, what that size would look like, how that would integrate with the existing design, and what type of considerations should we be looking at in terms of some of the site infrastructure, utilities, and overall planning of the facility as we are here today, just entering into construction. One of the things about the program of this is that we did depend highly upon the feasibility study done back in 2023, in terms of what we heard that would make an operational and a cost-effective facility and how this would be operated. So over on the right, upper right hand, you can see an outline there of some of the program elements that we identified as part of a possible future expansion. I'll go over those real quickly. This would be 4 high school basketball courts that would also support 8 high school volleyball courts and 8 middle school lacrosse courts. One of the more important things about any expansion with courts is the opportunity to be able to hold tournaments, and what size tournaments, and how can we plan for those in a way that is right size for this. And so with this facility, we would have multi-purpose spaces and team rooms to support what I consider to be a medium-sized tournament. I think what's important about this addition is that in a greater scale that it could plug into more of a regional tournament, would be in the community to support that at a higher level too as well. So in terms of a tournament, that's where it's really gauged at, is that medium size to be able to support a satellite size larger tournament. In addition to that, we do have the sports training component. Again, that was one of the other program elements that was really important to the facility, working with the Park District on their continued programming. Other things here would be viewing levels, concession lounge areas, court storage, and a lot of the other more operational considerations that we'd have for the facility. But the important part about developing a preliminary program is to make sure that this would be something that works with the existing infrastructure, but also could be planned as something that would have an overall operational performance in holding tournaments and really holding those other events throughout the year. The other thing that we'll take a real quick look at is just an estimate of probable cost of where we're at with something like this. Again, the target program, this is still a very high level. At the size of the facility, we'd estimate a construction cost of approximately $21 million. This would go into an overall project cost of roughly $23 million right now. This is taking into account some of the current market conditions and a lot of the really good bid results we are seeing. Just earlier, you saw some of the injury results, 28% under, 30% under. Even with this project, we're seeing it under by quite a bit. And so we're taking a look at what would this be more in line with what we're seeing today with the market. Currently, we are not applying any escalation to this cost just due to the fact that the timetable is unknown. But I think what's important today is just to see what that court expansion would look like, how that could plug into the existing facility, some of the considerations we'd have to make in terms of parking and relocating that, but also in terms of some of the costs that would come along with that as well. So with that, that ends my little quick presentation. I'll turn it back over to Mr. Phelan. Thank you for your time.
So I'm sorry, before you go, Mr. Davidson, first of all, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Davidson?
Just real quick, so
Mr. Friedels.
when we went to that city to the south and looked at their like really nice facility, right? Is this going to be the kind of the same concept of where the courts can come down and that supports all the different programs, whether it's volleyball, basketball, and literally a click of a button and it just kind of.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Fargo Sports, the way it's set up is that it has has 7 high school courts. It has 1 collegiate court, that's their prime court, and then it's set up with the cross courts, same thing, volleyball, basketball, cross courts for middle school. And so the intent of this is really to support a lot of those youth tournaments with those 8 courts, any type of camps or any type of programs like that with volleyball as well. I think wrestling would be another component that would be used highly with a facility like this, with the space it would have there, and then the 4 high school courts. And when you plug that in with like a Choice or even with a UND Wellness, you're now over at 9 courts in town that would be able to support kind of a court-only event. And so that's kind of the intent of this. Is it's a little smaller scale than Fargo Sports, but it would do the same thing.
Perfect. Yep. Pretty slick. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Mr. Phelan?
Thank you, Council President Sandy. I'm just going to go through the staff recommended actions and explain. We just got the bids for GMP number 2 last Thursday, and so we're still going through that. I don't see any substantial differences, but we wanted to get something in front of you to at least get some general consensus. We do have 2 weeks until the council meeting, so we have a couple weeks to work on some of the particulars before we get back here on July 7th. That's why we want to get in front of you. The first thing I want to highlight under GMP number 1, the pool package, which is the Murtha pool that we selected in all the ancillaries, that was included in GMP. Number 1, I want to highlight under the first bullet is that came in $1 million under what GMP on number 1. So we got a $1 million additional savings on top of, how GMP came in number 1. So that's $1 million. And as I recall, I think GMP number 1 was about $12.7 million under. So if you add the 12.7 plus the 1, we're at about 13.7 million. Under GMP number 2, and the CMAR is going through all the particulars, but we had lots of bid packages, lots of bidders. Overall, the bid came in $8 million under what was projected. Most of that was related to, 7 of that $8 million related to mechanical and electrical bids. And so again, we got really competitive bids on GMP2. When we come back here in a couple of weeks, we should have some more additional information, but the mechanical engineer and the electrical engineer are somebody we would both be familiar with and you'd be comfortable with, so we don't see any major issues. And in those large bids that really make up a lot of GMP2, they were very close when you look at the low and best bidder, so we feel pretty confident about those. The third bullet down there is to request the city council to allow us to move forward with, Mr. Davidson talked about that expansion with the hard courts, the training and all the ancillary things to help support, to allow us to further work on those details and to try to incorporate that into the current project would be the intent at this point in time. But getting your general consensus that we're on the right track, and let's try to incorporate this into the project sooner rather than later. The reason why that's important is a lot of the offsite infrastructure components, where that additional building with the courts are, we have infrastructure that's going to be in that area. And so if we do intend in the near future to incorporate that in, we want to know that by, in and around in July, because that'll impact how we would set up all the various infrastructure components. If we're not planning to do that in the near term at all, and then we can go forward with that infrastructure plan, but we just want to make sure that we give ourselves an opportunity to adapt if we do want to adapt in that regard. The other thing, we have reached out to the Park District. We do have an operation maintenance agreement. If we do expand the project, obviously we'd have to bring back the agreement itself for this expanded role. The Park District is supportive of us looking at this and for them to further operate a larger facility. I think there's excitement. The other thing there was some angst is that we did cut out, I would say primarily the hard courts. And so we have reached out to both the basketball and the volleyball youth community, and they are excited that we'd be able to add this into this particular facility. The last part is we've attached information regarding Red River BMX, and there's a list of improvements that are proposed to be made. We wanted to, at this point in time, to bring that to you also, to take a further look at that. To see if there's some willingness for the city council to look at that. It would give us a couple weeks to look at it. You can see some of the, I would say about half of that $700,000 to $800,000 improvements that are wanting to be made, about half of those are site improvements. So my thought is on those improvements, we would incorporate those into existing bids that we have. A lot of it's earthwork, it's pavement, it's concrete work. We would change order those areas into the existing contracts that we have. And most of that work you've already approved on their GMP one, so we would change order those in. There are other aspects that are more unique, upgrading the buildings, some of the bleachers, some of those, some of the starting areas that would make the facility better, more accommodating, and would better fit with the concept design that we're looking at when you look at the Alara Center, the Ultra Sports Complex, the Children's Museum, and then you would have these ancillary facilities that would blend better into kind of our district strategy. That's the other half. Those would be things that certainly would have to be designed, built, and all those sorts of things. So I think the easiest part for the city to incorporate in right now would be the site development stuff that I think that are notated in there. And I think their goal is, BMX has been awfully successful. And there were a lot of doubters out there, but they've grown their footprint, they've grown their audience, they've grown the riders, they've brought national tournaments. And this would be one more opportunity to have a premier facility with an incremental amount of additional investment. So I know there's representatives here from Red River BMX. If you have any specific questions about their requests, they'd be willing to answer them this evening if you'd be so willing on behalf of the city of Grand Forks. Those are the major items. And so when I added up all the cost savings, it's pretty incredible that we're here. We got a good problem to deal with, whether we want to do more rather than less. Usually, we're up here and we're asking to do less. So really, we have the $12.7 million in savings under the first GMP one. I mentioned $1 million in savings on the aquatic complex, so that's 13.7. And then we have the additional $8 million under GMP one or GMP two. So that gets us over that $21-22 million in savings that we're seeing right now, which is quite incredible at this point in time. So that's kind of where we're at. We're asking for advice on all these things, and if you give us a preliminary recommendation of what you want to do with all those various requests over the next 2 weeks, we'll do some additional work and be back here on July 7th. With that, I'd hand it back to you, Council President Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Thoughts? Yes, Mr. Weigel?
President Sandy, I just want to say that I know we've gone over the conflict of interest stuff a lot lately. I am a volunteer with Red River BMX, and so I would point that out and ask to be recused from voting on this.
I motion that Danny is able to vote.
Second. And then I have a question.
Yes.
Mr. Weigel does not have a financial interest, it sounds like, in this. And so, Mr. Gostick, could I get your opinion?
Thank you. I appreciate the disclosure by Mr. Weigel, but the view of the conflict of interest is when there's a pecuniary interest where you'd gain financially or there'd be some financial detriment depending on how you would vote. I understand that he's a volunteer. I don't think that volunteers get paid very much, if anything. They're probably paying money to participate. So I appreciate Mr. Weigel's integrity in bringing that to the council's attention, but I'm not viewing that as a conflict that would necessitate a vote, and he should be permitted to vote. But if the council is inclined to give him that blessing, my recommendation would be to allow him to vote, and that there isn't a conflict.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the floor. Further comment? All those in favor of letting Mr. Weigel vote, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Weigel did not vote on his own non-voting. Okay, moving right along. Further comments, thoughts? Yes, Ms. Lunsky?
So the BMX bathrooms, could they be incorporated into the new addition?
I'm going to ask Mr. Davidson. At first, we thought, as you're looking along that corridor, we'd have two ways in. You'd have that main corridor, and then as you look, we were looking at an entry area right into the facility right here where you could come in and use the restrooms. That's what we were thinking at the time would be the restroom solution other than porta potties. Obviously, it's a summer, warmer weather sport. So that was our original thought of using this facility and having some sort of connection here with the Hugos Raceway so that we didn't need to add something additional for a seasonal opportunities. Maybe Mr. Davidson maybe have a better response than that one.
Pretty good, Mr. Phelan. So, no, you're spot on. The idea has always been that we have some type of entrance over on the west side that would be able to be provided for any activities or events that are going on at the BMX track. Operationally, it'd be something the Park District would just have to work with them on and how that would work in terms of access. But we do have restrooms along the main corridor right on the west side over there to be able to access during events. We also have access on the north side if for some reason an event was going on in the Ultra Sports Complex, that they would have to go on the north side, enter the north side. So there's multiple ways that we can utilize the sports complex to support them during various events.
So you could work together if there was, because I assume you have to scan in or check in to get into the turf facility, that you could work with that group to let them in to use the bathroom?
Yes, and I would probably defer a little bit to the Park District, but they would probably work ahead of time to be able to provide some type of, access and access control for them during a special event to be able to use that. Again, depending on what the event is and depending on what's going on at the sports complex. So that'd be more of an operational thing between the two entities and how they'd work through that. I can only speak that we would have the capacity to do so and the ability to use that with access control.
I think my other thought is how do we pick BMX and not lacrosse, or I just don't know how we distribute these funds to one and not hear from any others.
Yep. I think Council President Sandy, Councilmember Alonso, well, we only pick winners, okay? And so I've been thinking about this today because I've gotten that question, why them and not other folks? Well, we generally pick groups that were the last money in. So I think about the Veterans Memorial Park. The city invested a little over $100,000 in that park to get it across the finish line. And so when you look at the building, the visitor center and the restrooms, that's what the city of Grand Forks contributed as part of that investment. I think at the skate park, just south of downtown, the city contributed about $100,000 into that park to get that across the finish line. So we've done a lot of things in that regard to help projects move forward. Originally, even with the Red River BMX Club, I think we have about $100,000 invested in that to get it where it is today too. Again, we were just a supporting investment in that project. So those are 3 projects, one of which, we're coming back to the Red River BMX and the Hugo's Raceway track to add some further amenities. And so I think the city council, no matter who's been sitting up there, has always been supportive of groups that have built their own momentum, built their own story, have their own investment in there to help them move along. And that's really been the history of the city of Grand Forks, because a lot of times our money has been the last money. It's probably been the easiest money. Then once we hand it over, we don't operate it day to day. And so we don't have to have all those concerns that we have. So I think if more people are doing great things, I think this city council would support it.
So is the BMX group willing to fundraise part of it where the city puts in the last amount to get past the finish line?
I think what they're looking for, and I'll ask a representative to come on up here from the Red River BMX, and Mr. Weigel, you can now engage and vote too. I think what they're looking at is, will the city consider a partnership with the club? And once we kind of resolve that, they know that the city council likely may not fund the whole amount, but if they have a firm idea of what the city council is willing to do and approved, they'll go in and do what they need to do. But that's why they're requesting now, so they kind of know what kind of animal they have to go after.
Gotcha. And then one last question. Is there a possibility to add on, where it says service entrance, that concessions check-in component that they were requesting? I'm not an architect. I'm just throwing stuff out there.
Maybe Adam, you could.
Ms. Berg, do you want to repeat Ms. Lunsky, do you want to repeat the question again, please?
Yeah, so instead of where it says service entrance, would it be possible to add on a concessions area or a storeroom for them where they can check out bikes, kind of what in their proposal? I assume adding it into this existing building would be cheaper than building a separate building.
Well, it comes down to, I think, a couple things. One, again, is going to be just the operations and what's already going to be stored in the sports complex and the needed for storage. For example, with the Park District, we coordinate things such as a skid steer, such as a lawnmower. There's other things as goals and movable bleachers that we have in there too. And so space can be limited. Is it possible? Yes, but I think we just got to look at what is the space for that storage area. The other thing I'll say too is going to be the type of traffic you have there. This is going to be a service entrance for the sports complex. You also have the main thoroughfare through the site, parking. So logistically, doesn't make sense. So anything is possible. Some of the things you want to consider as you would do this, if it would make sense or not.
Well, that's what we're looking for you to tell us if it makes sense.
Further comments? Yes, Mr. Friedel?
Just real quick. So, obviously we got to look at this from an economic development point. And so I don't know a lot about BMX, but when I start researching and looking at comparable cities, and so that even if you take someone smaller, that's like Aberdeen, South Dakota, had brought in national tournaments, it's easily $1 million in economic impact to the community. So I think that's pretty huge. And you look at some of these national data and some of the local racing leagues and all these other things bring in about 880,000. So I think keeping this in uniform and showing it's part of this complex is really important. I think it's going to be a central focus. We're not, as we've approved and not approved some other things, whether, casinos and all that, we need to focus now on making this center really profitable. And I think it's going to look really, really good. And I think it's going to probably bring in well over $1 million a year when we start getting other national races, regional races, filling every hotel room. I think it's pretty important to see that, some of these are bringing in 1,300, 1,500 people per, just some of the regional ones. So I think it's important to really keep this a part of what we're doing, the momentum going with this, the BMX track, and keeping it part of the aquatic center. And I think it's going to be very successful, and they're continuing to grow too. As according to some of these, some of them are producing 2.6 million for a national race. So it's pretty important to economic development. So, thank you.
I think the nice thing about, if I could add to Mr. Friedolf's, this BMX is a really nice complement to Grand Forks in the summer when the town is slower because there's not as many people here. UND students are here. People go to their lake. And if we can host national competitions or regional competitions that fill our hotels, it's a real big economic development opportunity for us, as opposed to what we do in the fall and the winter when things are busy around here, when they really help complement what our other facilities do in Grand Forks.
Just one little side
Yeah,
note.
Mr. Friedel?
I think it's really important too. We've got a lot of team sports in town. This complex would be a lot of team sports going on. Not everyone wants to do team sports. Not everyone wants to participate. They're individual contributors in some of these, single racing sports, and they excel at that. I think we need to promote that and keep that as an opportunity for our young folks. I know there's some sitting here as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Veen? Yes, sir.
Mr. Freeland, as we've looked at the request for the court addition, is that being looked at as a change order, or would that be a new bid?
Council President Sandy and Councilmember Veen, it would be a new bid.
It'd have to be.
It would be we don't have a final design, so if we came back and there was seriousness to it, we'd come back with a engineering agreement to go to all the design phases that we went through on the main building, and then ask our current construction manager to go out and seek bids. Similar to what Fargo did. If you looked, we went down to the Fargo did a phase 1, and then they went forward with phase 2. So as the first phase of the project was finishing, they were well into design of the second phase. It'd be a similar way that we would do to what Fargo did.
Can you potentially combine mechanical and electrical rooms so that you're not duplicating and have some efficiencies in cost just by the design, because you've already bid one, and that's why I talk about a change order. You may eliminate that and build a different one, again, mechanical room or something like that would have be more cost effective.
Yep. Council President Sandy and Councilmember Veen, I think that makes a lot of sense in certain areas, and it allows our team to start looking at value-added things that we can do in that regards, where maybe some things are new bids and some things are change orders. And start to look at how these two facilities now would sync together in the best way.
Because you will have to make some changes in parking. I mean, it's really hard to separate. You just slide it over, or do you bid the second part to the parking when you've already got bids, and you've got very good bids?
Yep, I think that would be true, because if you look at where we're going to add parking right here, we're going to lose it right here.
Right.
My guess is it's probably might even be a deduct. My guess is that we're probably going to have a less of a footprint over here versus what we're going to gobble up with this addition. So those are all the things that we would work on, and we'd have some of those answers come 2 weeks from now. And then obviously if you give us the go-ahead, we would start all the details on that. But we wanted to get a sense of, is this worthwhile for us to take a serious look at over the next 2 weeks? And then 2 weeks from now, we'd ask for more of a formal agreement to move forward with all the particulars.
And if I could, it was great news to have the reduced bids come in and the identified savings, what all came together. The downside to it is that we designed to a lesser amount than we could have because we didn't think we had the money. So in trying to do that, you take things out of the original bid because you're trying to make budget. And so my concern or request, we'll say, is that we look at those critical items that were probably taken out and see about the opportunity of bringing them back. I don't think there's a lot of them, but there would be enough of those that we could see if they could be incorporated now because of the cost savings. Again, there's no guarantee everybody's going to want to add the building. That would just be savings. And I thought with that, it would be great to bring them back in. One of the items that's probably most critical, I think, is the second bulkhead that we talked about. And last time, they said it was in. I'm not sure if it's in or not. I was assured when I voted that it was. That's something that has to be addressed structurally to make sure we can do that. So when you look at that, there's some things here with the pool decks. And then they talked about the sports training that was added in. I know there was training room space that was eliminated, so is that bringing that back in now?
Council President Sandy and Councilmember Veen, it would. So right in this area right here, if you look, as you recall, as part of our preliminary program, we were looking at a 4,200 square foot training area. So that would be, as part of this proposal, that would be bringing that back into this project and adding it somewhere along this corridor in this area, just off where the turf facility would be.
Yeah, so that'd be great. We're getting that back in
Yes.
is what I wanted to talk about. The last thing I just wanted to bring up was the address of the BMX track, which I think has been phenomenal success. There'd be no question in my mind that we've done that. One of the concerns I have would be how any additionals that would be how we would fund that. I'm concerned sales tax was intended for the Sports Center and the Laris Center, and how do we go outside of that, regardless of how the benefits to it? Because I guess I'm proud of what we've got. I have no problem growing it. I just don't like the funding source.
And Council President Sandy and Councilmember Veen, we wouldn't use we'll call it the extension of the sales tax regarding the Alaris Center and the Ultra Sports Complex. We would use those funding sources that we did with the offsite infrastructure. So it would likely come from our existing sales tax and other funds that we used to help support that. So it wouldn't come from the extended sales tax. We would come back with a funding plan that would fund the items from existing funding sources.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veen, Mr. Phelan. Ms. Burke, questions, comments?
So if I calculated correctly, we're saving potentially $21.7 million. And so I think it's great that we're looking to potentially add on this court addition. I think one reservation that I had about the original proposal was how are we choosing pickleball versus basketball, and now we can have the best of both worlds. So I really like that. I had a constituent reach out to me and express some concern, and I think it's a valid concern on how almost $800,000 request, how are we just going to pick one organization instead of, if we want to give out and invest in our community, why aren't we putting out an RFP to do so? And so I understand the site dynamics, but I think it's difficult just to go to just one organization with such a large amount of money.
I would point out that we're funding pickleball, and there isn't a nickel invested in this from the pickleball folks. Yes, Ms. Osowski.
Yeah, I have lots of comments on this one. The first comment I'm going to make is we all know how the BMX track ended up on our agenda, and I guess if we're going to start putting people's names behind agenda items, I would like to see other council people's names behind agenda items also, like the administration did to me about the fluoride. So let's just try to keep that uniform. You guys proved me wrong. I'm very happy to see that these bids came in within our budget. I have always disagreed that this project has never been on budget with us pulling from all the different funds to fund it. We although we could only bond for $100 million, this was going to cost us, what, an additional $20 million. So with the $21 million that we're saving, I consider this, at this point, on track within budget that we first stated that, when we held the tax. So I don't consider that like we're saving an additional $23 million that we can afford to put in all of this additional stuff. And the $23 million is just for the courts. That does not include the $800,000 for the BMX. So that would be, we'll just say $24,000 or $24 million. So we saved 20 and now people want to spend 24. And that's really hard for me to swallow. Also, Mr. Phelan, you made a comment, and this isn't really against you, so I don't, but you made a comment that we helped fund projects past the finish line. That is not at all what we did with pickleball, and I am still very upset that we fully funded their project as a private club, and they haven't been in here again trying to support this project. I don't feel like they've been involved. They're just happy they got their $6 million facility, and now we have other entities like basketball, volleyball, the BMX track that are just, I hate to say it, but if we wouldn't have overspent just on pickleball, we could have given $1 million to all of these different clubs. And we probably would have done a lot more good than building just pickleball courts. Let me see here. Another huge concern that I have with this project is the Children's Museum. We were just presented today, like we gave them $10 million, we gave them land, we gave them infrastructure, we're gonna take care of, their parking lots and things like that. And the $10 million was to match the money that they were supposed to get from the state. And now they're maybe gonna get $1 million. So here's a project that we, are $15 million deep into by now, and they're going to be short on their budget goals. So I think before we go adding additional things to this project, we make sure that we are able to support the things that we're already building or that we are already very invested into. If that Children's Museum, fails at some point, that's on us. And so I'm very happy that the bids came in, and I consider that was the goal. And we are within our budget at that point. Taking out $21 million and then trying to add in $24 million just doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when we can only bond for $100 million and we are already borrowing out of these other funds to put in the infrastructure and the roads. And then Mr. Phelan just stated that we would borrow another, $800,000 out of these other funds to go to the BMX track. I completely disagree with all of this. I don't disagree with BMX. I would have rather given the BMX track $800,000 to build the facilities that they need than fund pickleball for $6 million. I am still, maybe is it too late to take out pickleball and maybe look into some of these other things? How much would that cost us? Could we turn part of the pickleball courts into some extra bathrooms for the BMX track? I feel like we overspent on a private club, and now we set a bad precedence, and now all these other private clubs are going to come knocking on our door. And it wasn't us getting pickleball over the finish line. We fully funded that. So I'm very happy that the bids came in and put us within our budget, but us spending more money puts us back right out of the budget. And so I disagree with all of this. Thank you.
Council President, I'll just comment on one. I think the Children's Museum, I'm going to have Dan follow up on kind of what our requirements are on that. And I don't agree with, I think we should, we're using funds, we're investing funds, we wouldn't borrow funds, we would use those funds just like we did before. And I think with pickleball, they're similar to the turf and the aquatics. We invested in those facilities on behalf of the community. They've agreed to be users. They're going to be paying through user fees. And I think the pickleball group is going to be one of the highest paid users to use this facility. So they're going to pay through that. And obviously that's in the Park District hands. So I think they were all treated relatively the same. They haven't come back here because we haven't asked them. And I think sometimes they felt like if they showed up here, they wouldn't be welcomed after decisions were made. So I think with the Ultra Sports Complex, the city council's made decisions. We've gone out and worked hard and gotten good results. And now we're just seeing if the city council wants to do a little bit more.
One more comment after that. So you talk about we're not pulling from these funds, we're borrowing. How are we paying them back from, we already bonded the most we could off of our sales tax, that $100 million. So what are we using to pay ourselves back then? Because we have to still fund the Alara Center. I mean, that's still a big part of this tax that we voted on. And so we can't just let them fall to the sidelines either.
Council President Sandy and Council Member also, I'll have Maureen follow up. We're using some of all those, that same sales tax, and rest assured, we've taken care of the Alara Center because guess what? The city of Grand Forks owns the Alara Center. We're not going to leave the Alara Center behind, and we've invested in that in highly. In the future, we're going to invest in that. And we're the only entity that can fund things like this. So we've always done the right thing. And maybe Marie can go over all the monies that we're using in investing in this facility all generally relate to this sales tax.
So a lot's been stated, so I'll try to cover the best I can, just from maybe the whole funding structure. So first of all, the $110 million budget was made up of $100 million borrowed through, and we were here in front of you with the interim financing, got very favorable rates. We've got some good buying power there. $10 million was what we were using with cash reserves, and that's looking to be even more favorable than what we had estimated with the cash that will be available for the project. When we look at the site infrastructure that's been referred to, there's a combination of funding sources for that. The part that directly relates to the Altru Sports Complex will come from the Alaris Altru Sports Complex 0.75% sales tax. The portion that is utility related is cash from those utility funds, won't be borrowed. There will be a component of the paving of the common area that would be coming from your economic development sales tax. So that's coming, and that would be paid over time. Still more to come, I believe, with how council wants to go forward with the BMX and funding, and whether that's all portion, how that's paid for, but that would not come from the 0.75% sales tax. But we would look to those utility funds and the economic development sales tax funds. Hopefully that covers most of it. And no funds have been exchanged hands yet with the Children's Museum. So those, and I believe Mr. Gossett will probably review that. Certain conditions need to be met before any money exchanges hands. So the city doesn't have anything in the Children's Museum at this time.
Okay, but we do have the $10 million set aside for the Children's Museum over the next, 5 years, I believe, right?
So there's $5.5 million that's set aside, and then over 10 years, $400,000 a year.
Yeah, and then you talked about $10 million cash reserve. I guess I wasn't aware that we were spending $10 million of our cash reserve on this. I thought we were bonding for 100. I thought that we got $10 million from Altru, and then we were pulling out of, like the infrastructure and the paving and stuff. I guess I was not aware about the $10 million cash reserve being used.
So I don't have the slide in front of me, but it's been presented before. So the $10 million gift from Altru comes in over time.
Oh, okay.
So that the portion of that comes in at the time of the construction is part of the cash that's referred to. A part of it is also donations from Mr. Freisted and Simplot, and the remaining portion is what's in construction reserve cash.
Okay, thank you so much, Maureen.
President Sandy, there's a couple more. I mean, we can't go over all the inaccuracies of the last comments, but there's a couple more I think we should touch on, if you don't mind.
Mr. Mayor, certainly.
The Children's Museum did get $5 million from the state. In the previous biennium, they tried to get another $5 million this year, so they have gotten $6 million if that comes through, that last $1 million from the state. They've raised about $27 million total, 10 of which is from the city, so they've raised $17 million from other sources. I think they're doing a great job. That's something to get really hard to get across the finish line, and despite getting pushback from people while they're working very hard, they're still going forward. Pickleball, that's anybody can use those courts. I mean, those are going to be used by a ton of people. I'll probably rent it out with my kids. I'm sure a lot of other people will. One of the users of that is the club. They came and supported. I thought that was great. But let's not confuse that with the club getting something. All they get is to use it just like we do. We hope they use it a lot to pay a lot for it, and that'll help fund the facility. But I think we need to be more accurate when we talk about things, and we do need to remember when we have information that's available that's been presented 15 different times, we can go back and look at that information and educate ourselves before throwing out numbers. I think that'll be beneficial to our meetings going forward so that people here know what's going on, so they don't believe that comments that are being made that are inaccurate are reality. So I would hope we can do that in the future, but just wanted to make those clarifications, President Sandy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Weigel, something for the good of the order?
I would just add that I appreciate the conversation. I think that I'm not going to speak for Red River BMX. I'm supportive of all these projects. I think youth sports is one of the most important things that we can add to our community. I believe that tournaments are one of the most important things we can add to our community. And I think the opportunity to have the Ultra Sports Complex is really important because it drives people to Grand Forks for tournaments, as long as these organizations are able to put them on. And so I'm supportive of all that. I think BMX has had a lot of investment, everything from thousands of dollars worth of bikes for kids that may not be able to afford them, to helmets for kids that may not be able to afford them, or maybe they just don't have it at that point. We've invested in memberships for low-income families. We've invested into the track itself, whether that's a $30,000 race surface, whether that's $10,000 worth of glue so that people that are volunteering their time outside of their normal day-to-day jobs aren't out there every day having to try fix everything. We've gone as far as adding a new safety gate for the race to start, which is $35,000 to $40,000. There's been a lot of things that the track has added to bring value to the community, value to the riders, and be able to attract national series races, which last year was the first one ever held in North Dakota. And so I think that all these organizations, a lot of them are all volunteers that are doing their best to put Grand Forks in a better spot than it was before. And so I'm excited to see what the future looks like.
Thank you, Mr. Weigel. Further comments? Mr. Fritos?
So I just wanted to make sure, what are we voting on? This is obviously not going to go forward as a full package, right? Are we going to break this up?
I would assume we should vote on the items individually. Yep. I've been actually parsing through the staff report, trying to figure out what exactly we're voting on myself.
I think, Council President, to help you out in City Council, I think what we're asking for, the first paragraph really is stating, I'm just letting you know we got a $1 million savings in GMP1. Good news. The second paragraph is also noting that we're $8 million under on GMP2, with more details coming. So on July 7th, under the pool, we're going to come back to say there's a $1 million savings. Please approve that. GMP number 2, We intend to bring that back to you, and with all the due diligence, and it's going to come back likely $8 million less than what we had estimated. Paragraph 3 is really stating, because of that, we're asking this evening preliminarily, because on July 7th, we are asking to move forward with the next steps of this expansion due to the savings that we presume will carry out over the next 2 weeks. And our team would get together with more details to work on that. The final paragraph would be to preliminarily, we would come back with a plan, working with Red River BMX with what we think as city administration is a good strategy to invest in the BMX track for city council review and approval. So we would do all those things. And why it's stated the way it is, if you have zero interest in working with the BMX and investing further in that track, what we didn't want is for us to go work over the next 2 weeks with something that you have no interest in looking at. So that's what we would do on all, I think there's 4 or 5 of those recommendations. All that would come back to the July 7th with more information and more detailed information.
Does everybody understand what we're doing? Okay, great. I think I'm a big supporter of BMX as well, and I think the attraction that it has is something new and fun in our community, for our community. And I really appreciate Mr. Weigel and the team at BMX for all the work that they put in. I feel like that, how do I say, it's not rushed. I'm not feeling like we have a good solid understanding of what the numbers are. To Mr. Veen's point, I'm not 100% sure that the taxpayers of Grand Forks, when they were voting for the turf and aquatics facility, were mentally thinking that they were going to be supporting a BMX track. But that's neither here nor there. I do think, though, that like the Children's Museum, for example, they're expected to fundraise 60% of what they're doing. I know that the BMX folks have been in lots of people time and they have been raising funds and doing those sorts of things, but I think that there should be some expectation of input from the group. I don't know what that is. I don't know if I've got that mentally defined in my head. I do know that both the skate park and the Veterans Memorial were funded out of 2163, if I recall correctly, economic development, right?
The skate park were CDBG funds, and Veterans Memorial Park was out of 2163. But, similar kind of earmarked funds that we can do quality of life investments.
I think knowing that, because I'm supportive of moving forward with basketball courts and the volleyball courts, I think it's based upon what I was hearing from the community. I think it's important that we get our consultants working on that to try to come up with numbers. I'd like to see where we are with those numbers. I would like to see what refined numbers look like for BMX, but I think if half of the cost of what we're talking about is in a standalone building, just looking at the map, I don't even know where the standalone building would work. So if there is a way, as Ms. Lunsky was saying, to work in a concessions area and bathroom on the west side, and just incorporate that into the building, I think that would financially probably be most beneficial. So getting some more solid numbers on that. I'm not saying I'm not a no. I'm not saying I'm a no. I'm saying I'm a not right now because I don't feel like I have enough info. But then again, I don't have enough info on the basketball courts either. So anyway, anyone want to make a motion, call this a night, or what do we want to do? More? Yes, Ms. Berg?
I'd motion to approve to move forward with a bid package 3 and look at potential change orders to consolidate the building.
Does that make sense to you, Mr. Phelan?
Yeah. Does that also mean we'll look to refine the BMX request and provide a recommendation, more refined recommendation also?
I think I'd like to do the BMX one separate.
Okay. So,
good. Okay, second by Friedels. Are you clear with the?
Can you repeat your motion? Thank you.
To move forward with bid package 3 and look to do the potential change orders.
Council President, I take that as you're approving us to move forward under the first 3 paragraphs.
Yes.
And bring back a final recommendation to you on July 7th, under those 3. BMX being the 4th paragraph.
I would agree with that. I think that's what that, yes. And Mr. Friedels, you're okay with that? Great. Okay. Further comments? Yes, Mr. Veen?
Would that include trying to get those priority items back in for the aquatics and the turf?
That we'll Council President Sandy and Councilmember Bean, we'll bring the remaining things that are not in. We'll bring back the bulkhead. We'll probably have to have a deeper discussion. When we brought back the aquatic complex, not to belabor the meeting, but I'll have to at this point, is the aquatic group picked the 5-lane warm water pool in lieu of the we'll call it the pool, the major pool that would be of a certain length, which would be able to have the 2 bulkheads. They all agreed with that. And I think what's happened, you know what happens behind the scenes, now everyone's trying to add back in, but that's hard to add back in because we got a building footprint the way it is.
Yep.
That one's going to be hard, but we can come back with just so you know what you accepted and the pool group agreed to. But I suspect some people are saying, can we do it all? I think it's going to be awfully hard to now change the pool because we've kind of set the foundation.
If you would, if you don't mind, I would like I said, had we known that in the first place, we'd have the savings that would have been in there. We know just more today, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Further comments? There is a motion and a second on the floor. Hearing no comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Wasowski dissents. Thank you. Are there additional comments or motions regarding BMX?
I'll make a motion to move forward with the BMX because I do want some more information about it. I'm hesitant, but I would like more information.
What specifically do you want?
I would like information about the impact on the community economically, as well as what are the priorities of the BMX track users if we weren't able to support the entire project. And I would also like to look with an administration looking to determine, do the BMX riders give X amount if, sort of example.
I think I understand the motion, Council President Sandy.
Okay, Mr. Friedels,
I'd like to see if you're okay with
do you understand the motion?
So, I think so, but I think maybe, because there is a list of capital improvement items there, I would like to see maybe a prioritization, like there's some safety items there too. It's like, better lighting is really a good thing to have. It's not a nice to have, it's probably a good to have, so you can prioritize the list of those items. So if we can get the price within a box, you can maybe have some of them now and some later. I think it's just something we really should look at that list, because holistically, you might not be able to capture it all, but we really do need finer pricing on all of them. As we saw, pricing is coming in a lot lower than normal now, so now's the time to act.
Okay. Was that a second?
Yes, a second.
Very good. Thank you. Further comments? Again, I'm gonna vote yes to get more information. I'm concerned that the basketball courts are gonna eat up any savings that we had, probably, and then some. And then if we put in another bulkhead and anything else Mr. Veen wants, we're upside down again. But may as well. We're playing with funny money these days. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Wasowski dissents. Thank you. Good discussion. Anything else? City Council comments tonight, Ms. Wasowski?
No, thank you, Mr. President.
Ms. Berg?
No, thank you.
Ms. Lunsky?
I just want to shout out to those kiddos back there who made it through this 2.5-hour meeting. Great job.
Yep, good job. Mr. Friedels?
Is next week the 5th Monday of the month? Just checking. No?
No.
Okay, just checking.
Mr. V? Vice President Weigel?
Nope.
Thank you. Everyone, is there a motion? to
move adjournment.
By Osowski, second by Berg. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.